Hold on, sorry. I just realized I gotta put my phone on airplane because people try to call me and they bump me out of Zoom. So let me make sure I do that. I've been teaching since 10:30 today, so yeah. uh, anyway, I want to start out by saying I have a PowerPoint. I'm not going to use it. Here's why: because I have been staring at my own face in a screen for the last 3 hours. And I don't want to stare at them. I want to see y'all's faces and your smiles and your beauty today. So I'll send Erin the PowerPoint. You can have it later, but I cannot stare at myself in a screen for another hour. I just can't, y'all. I just can't. So I'm just keeping it real. So I'll talk and give you some terminology, and then I'll send the PowerPoint to you along with some other resources that I give away for free wherever I go. So I see Antonio, my brother, is on the phone. So hey, Antonio McLemore. And Erin, what she didn't share is like, that's my sister girl right here, Erin. I love you, Erin, like a sister. Love you, love you, love you. So I feel honored to be in this space with you. I hate that we're on a screen and not in person, but you know, you make do with what you got. So before I get started, I want to share with you a little bit about how I'm moving through this moment in time. I believe in context. I believe context is really important. And I also believe that as a consultant, it's really easy to hear my bio, but not to understand that I don't train in something that I'm not willing to also do and be. So I am an absolute believer in a lot of consultants have done academic study on a topic and they come and deliver their knowledge that they've researched. I have lived the work that I'm about to teach on, and I continue to live in it. And so I'm not going to talk about something that I'm not also doing. I literally just stepped out of a class that I teach every Friday. So I teach children every Friday on my own for free, not because I have to, but because if I'm going to talk to other folks about how to do it, I have to also be able to do it, right? And so I don't take that lightly. And I think a lot of consultants were teachers at some point. I am a teacher today. And I teach a class every Monday night, and I teach a class every Friday for free. My class on Friday is 4-year-olds to 54-year-olds. So it's a class, it's an intergenerational course called Becoming, in honor of Michelle Obama's book. It's about developing your identity. But I just literally jumped out of that class. It ended at 1 o'clock, and I was like, so I told Erin, I was like, I had to get some water because I literally went from keynoting to my class to this. But I want to share with you why that's also important. I think we can give you a lot of head knowledge. I want to give you head and heart knowledge. So I want you to connect your brain to your heart today, because that for me is SEL. Social emotional learning is not just this. We have intellectualized this stuff to the point that it's not practical. It's not practical. And so I want to give you really practical stuff today that I am walking out every day, that I'm wrestling with every day, that I'm trying to figure out every day. Okay, so I don't come to you today as this expert. I come to you as a fellow sojourner in this work. And so 7 months ago, when COVID hit, I'm a consultant full time. I don't work for Tacoma Public Schools anymore. That was my last full-time job. Real talk. When you run for a political office statewide, you have to give up your job unless you're a person who they let keep their job and you just don't go to that job and you keep getting paid. But out of integrity, I walked away from my job in Tacoma to run statewide. You have to be wealthy to run for office. I mean, this is another thing I learned in that process. And when I lost the election, I did not plan to lose. I do not play to lose. I'm a baller, y'all. I mean, I played basketball for 45 years. I do not play to lose. I play to win. I did not have an alternative plan. So when I lost my election in 2016, I didn't have a plan. I also say unashamedly, I'm a person of faith. And I just said, okay, what now? I don't have a plan. Somebody's got a plan out there. And I said, I got into this to be a champion for children. And so I posted on Facebook the day after I conceded the race, how can I be a champion for y'all who are educators? And I was invited into a classroom the day after I lost my election. And that is the beginning of my consulting business, is that I just started speaking in classrooms. And then people said, hey, can you come to equity training? I did not have a plan to be doing this. This is not, if you'd asked me 4 years ago, what are you going to be doing for it? This is not it. And I will tell you, I know that I was made for this moment in time. I know that right now, this moment that we are living in right now is what I was made for. And so I've been doing racial equity work for the last 4 years. And what's crazy is if you're a consultant, you do not get a salary. You get paid when you do work. So March 8th, I had my first cancellation. March 8th was the first time that something was canceled. And I thought, a couple weeks, we'll be back to. By March 12th, I had zero on my calendar. Zero. Not a thing on my calendar from March to June. And I'm the money maker in my house. My husband's a teacher, but I make the money. And I had to turn to my husband on a Friday night and say, honey, I regret to inform you, but I'm not bringing in any money from now until June, and maybe later, I don't know. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and he said, do you know what, honey, we're going to be okay. We already paid tuition for our 2 kids in college. We got 2 in college at one time. One in grad school, $70,000 a year. Grad school, no joke. Another one in undergrad. He said, we already paid their tuition. We got a roof over our head and we got cars. We're gonna make this work, honey. See, I'm living out social emotional learning. I'm telling you the story. I want you to listen to this. This is how we talk about this social emotional learning intellectually. I am walking you through my social emotional learning journey. Okay. So I just want you all to make that connection. So my husband says, honey, we're good. I just need you to be right now. I need you to just be. And so I remember Saturday came and I am either hair on fire or asleep. I don't sit well. I'm hair on fire or asleep. And so I'm in my house and now the whole state gets shut down. And I'm like, what do I don't sit well. What am I going to do? And I remember I'm sitting in my bedroom with my iPod in my lap. And I said, you know what? I have a computer and I have 20,000 social media followers. I'm just going to go online for free. What can I give back to my community? And so starting on Monday, I started reading aloud to children every morning at 9:30. I read aloud in English on Monday, Wednesday, Spanish, Tuesday, Thursday, French or Dutch on Friday. Yes, I speak Dutch. I know that's a little weird, but I do speak Dutch. And then I taught a class on racial equity for adults every day from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And I had a class for students from 6 years old to 15 called Becoming a Change Agent every day for 83 days in a row. 83 days in a row. On June 30th, I told all the babies, y'all, bye-bye. I will not be here tomorrow. I need a break. I need a vacation. Miss Erin needs a vacation. But here's what happened. Y'all remember when Ahmaud Arbery happens and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd? I am teaching class while all that's happening. But here's what had happened. Because I put my best out into the world and I taught a class, I now had community that I was able to connect to in that moment when all this tragedy is happening around me. And as a Black mother of a 25-year-old man, as I watched Ahmaud Arbery, who's 25 years old, and I thought of my own 25-year-old son, I had this community that was around me. And so I want to share with y'all, you need community to do this work. We adults need community to do this work. And so that's what I would say to you. The other thing that I learned through this process was to really be intentional about gratitude. And so even when everything was falling apart, I made a decision starting on March 15th, I will choose gratitude every day. And so every day, I start every day with choosing to be grateful. And by the way, gratitude is not a natural emotion. It is something that has to be cultivated like a muscle. And as a ball player, I know cultivating muscles, it means you break it down and you build it back up, and you've got to do it every day. I shoot a layup in my sleep today because I've shot 100,000 layups in my life, right? It's not because I'm naturally good at them. I sucked at layups when I first started, but I've shot 100,000 layups. So I can shoot a layup now and I can shoot a free throw in my sleep now because gratitude is the same. And so here's what I want to challenge you to do in the chat right now. I want you to type out something that you are grateful for. And I want to encourage you to make gratitude a practice. Do you know that when you practice gratitude, it actually changes your brain chemistry? It changes your brain chemistry. And so I have changed my brain chemistry, and it forces you to be more positive, even when all hell is breaking loose. Y'all, I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I want you to think about in the context of the last 6 months. I have lost all of my work from March to June. Ahmaud Arbery gets killed. My son is 25. I'm a runner. Breonna Taylor, then George Floyd. All hell breaks loose in the town that I was born in, where my family lives. That gratitude, because I had shifted my mentality, it allowed me to keep pushing forward every day. And so my gratitude for today is I'm locked up at home with 3 of the most amazing people on the planet. My husband, we've been married for 27 years. And it has not always been rainbows and unicorns. I'll just say that. Like gratitude, marriage takes work. It's been some work, y'all. It has not always been fun, but we decided to do the work. And I am married to today my best friend on the planet. And that's my gratitude is I have 2 amazing boys they're men. They're always going to be my babies, but they're men who are home with me right now and my husband. But I practice gratitude. That's the first thing I do in every speech I deliver, every training that I do. And so I want to encourage you to practice gratitude and get your young people practicing, even if it's as tiny as I got to eat today, or the sun came out today. Like, start small. So that was first thing. Second thing, I put my best out into the world. So when I talk about self-care and social emotional learning with students, I tell them, what do you have in your hands? What's that little thing that you have? Maybe it might be a little thing, like your little gift, that little whatever that you bring. Every single person on the planet has a gift. Every one of you has at least one talent. Put that out into the world. And that's part of, for me, social emotional learning is, do you know that the poorest people, when they're able to give back in some way, it changes how they show up in the world. I taught at the poorest high school in the state of Washington, Rogers High School. It's in North Spokane. That zip code is the poorest zip code in our state, not the Hilltop. I taught at Jason Lee too. So I've taught in some really poor spaces. 20 years ago, the Hilltop, totally different place than it is today. But I've taught in North Philadelphia. I've taught on the Hilltop. I've taught in Hilliard, Spokane, poorest communities. I taught my students to give back. You may feel like you have nothing. You always have something in your hand. Always, always, always. And when you can sow into other people, it changes how you show up, because you realize, oh, I do have value. I may not have a lot of stuff. I may not have a lot of money, but I do have something to give. So 1, gratitude. 2, put out into the community something that you have in your hand. Number 3, self-care. When this work of serving young people and serving each other is radical. It's radical and it's intense. And because it's radical, you need to radically love yourself. Self-care is not this fluffy thing that you do when you have time. Self-care is absolutely necessary if you are going to do this work well. And so one of my rules for myself is every day, spirit, mind, and body. Every day I do something, spirit, mind, and body. Every single day. I do not pass go without doing something, spirit, mind, and body. At 49 years old, I ran a mile in 7 minutes and 20 seconds. If you are a runner, you know that, like, I killed it, but I worked hard at that because I knew for me as an athlete, like, I needed something physical. You need to figure out for you what that is. If you're not a runner, please don't try to run a mile in 7 minutes. That could kill you. Like, we don't want to kill you, but find something that you can do physically to get your body moving, to do something, spirit, mind, and body every day. You deserve it. And here's the analogy that I've been using lately. I've been flying since I was 5 years old. Every time you get on a plane, they tell you, you know, if the plane goes down and that air mask comes out, you got to put it on yourself before you put it on your children. Y'all, the plane is going down. The plane is going down right now, in case you had not seen. Hopefully it will go back up. But right now we going down and the masks are coming out of the sky. And you need to put it on you first. We've got to stop putting it on the babies first, because we're putting it on the babies and killing ourselves. And we cannot care for them if we're not caring for ourselves well. And we who work in education do not do a good job of taking care of ourselves. We don't. I have been around educators for almost 50 years now. My parents are both teachers. This is actually my 30th year in education now. I've been watching educators a long time. We do not take care of ourselves. We sacrifice ourselves for children all the time. And actually, that's not good. We can't serve children as well if we are not well. So those are just, that's the pre-conversation. So that's the pre-equity training conversation. But that is all about equity. Okay. And so again, I don't ask y'all to do what I'm not willing to live through. Here's what's crazy about my life. So I told you I lost everything from March to June. Well, of course, what happened when all racial hell broke loose? Who's the person people called? Because I'd been online every day. I've been busier since June than I've ever been in my career. And all that money that I lost from March to June, I have made, and I've doubled it. Although here's what I'll say though, and just in all transparency, my youngest son, who is super smart, one wrong on the SAT, like he's super brainy smart on the spectrum, like socially not so smart, but intellectually really smart. I'm walking through the downstairs to our kitchen a couple weeks ago, and he says, "Mom, it feels like you're really busy right now." And I think that's good. And I think you're probably making more money than you've ever made. But I wonder if that compensates for the emotional toll of talking about race 5, 6, 8 hours a day. And he's right. It's heavy. This stuff is really, I had to take last week off with the election. I couldn't. So you've got to set boundaries for yourself. We can't ask students to set boundaries if we're not willing to set boundaries. So you have to be really clear about, and it's okay to say no, y'all. It's okay to say no. Say no. So last week I took the week off, and just very few things that I did last week because I knew I needed to protect myself and make sure that I was caring for my children first. So number 1, gratitude. Number 2, put your best out into the world. Okay. Number 3, self-care. So in the context of this setting, so let's get into training. I already heard conversation about norms. I actually don't talk about norms, and here's why. I'm really explicit about this when talking about equity. And I'm actually going to write about this today, and I may do a Facebook Live on this very thing because it's just like in my spirit, right? It's just I can't get it out of my brain right now. Norms suggest that there is a normal way of being. And that normal way of being is almost always centered in middle-class white values. Now, there's nothing wrong with middle-class white values. If you know my story, I was adopted by middle-class white people. So I'm an expert in middle-class white values. My parents are middle-class white people. They raised me in Europe. So I know middle-class white values better than all y'all put together. I have been a student of them for 49 years. I know middle-class white values. Not that those are wrong, but to suggest that that is the norm is really problematic for me, especially when we're talking about equity. And so I stopped using the word norms. I talk about community agreements. And here's why. I really think that we need to have conversation about how are we going to be our best and bravest selves in these conversations. Best and bravest selves. Y'all have probably heard people talk about safe spaces. I actually think talking about equity and talking about race is never safe. It is never safe. It's not safe for me, for sure. And it's not safe for most of you, okay? And so I'm going to suggest that safety is not something I want, actually. I think, especially right now, it requires bravery and courage. And so I'm going to ask today, and if I were with you in person, we'd spend more time on this, but I'm going to offer some ideas about community agreements to create a space that's really brave. And so first, stay engaged. Don't have me on in the background as you're doing something else. And this is not about me. This is about the conversation. This conversation is so critical that if I'm background noise for you, you're going to catch just enough to be really dangerous. So don't let this be background noise. And to be honest, it's being recorded. So if you have other stuff to do, I'd rather you go do that other stuff and come back when you can really focus and listen to the recording. I'm just real talk. I'm, as you can see, I'm about being real. I don't play around here. So if you can't focus, if you have something going on, no shade, just take care of that and come back and listen to this when you can be 100% focused. Because dangerous when you're hearing little pieces and you don't have the whole thing, you will end up doing more danger to yourself and to other people in this conversation. Number 2, I want you to take a posture of learning, not fixing. Especially right now, and this is very middle-class white. White people love to fix stuff. Love to fix stuff. I see a problem, I'm gonna go fix it. But you don't even understand the problem yet. And in an hour with me, you're not gonna understand the problem. So stop with the fixing. You're not gonna fix it. Just focus on learning, okay? And so just stay in that learning posture. Don't try to fix stuff, okay? Because you can't right now. I want you to embrace the discomfort. Conversations about race, and especially in the Pacific Northwest, are awkward and uncomfortable. Folks do not like to talk about race. And I'm really explicit. I talk about racial equity. It's not that I don't acknowledge there are other ways to look at equity, socioeconomics, gender, sexual orientation. There are all these other things. Race is the one we have the hardest time talking about, so I talk about that one. I told you I'm a baller. Give me the hardest thing. That's what I want to start with, because I know if I can help you have the hardest conversation, we can transfer all of that to the other things later. But I want to start with the thing that in the Pacific Northwest is the hardest. We do not like Seattle. I know y'all are in Tacoma, but Seattle folks, they think they're super woke and super liberal. I call them the faux liberals. They're super woke on certain things, but race is not one of those things, right? And so race is, I find in Washington State, one of the hardest things to talk about. Everybody wants to talk about poverty. Let's talk about poverty, because guess what? You can't change poverty. So let's talk about the thing we can't change. Race, we can change how we think about it, but it's uncomfortable. And here's what I want to tell you. It is uncomfortable, and push through it. So I told y'all I'm a baller, or I was a baller, past tense. I could probably still shoot the lights out, but I don't anymore, because at 45, I hung the shoes up. I was like, I'm going to stop while my body is still intact and I can still play. I'm going to stop at the top, okay? I run now, One Direction. This is about, I'm 49, One Direction. But I run not because I like running. I don't understand cross-country runners don't make any sense. Like, why you would run without a ball to some nowhere place makes no sense to me at all. I don't understand it. So y'all who do that later, you can call me and explain why the heck you just run. I don't understand. I run because for me, it's my practice, my physical practice of pushing through discomfort. The work that I do is so uncomfortable. I spend 95% of my time talking to all white audiences who don't want to be there. This work is so uncomfortable that for me, I have to physically practice pushing through discomfort. And so that's why I run. I run 10 miles a week. If I could go to the gym, I would run 20 miles a week. But right now on the concrete, my 49-year-old body can take 10. I walk another 60 a week. So I get about 70 miles in a week. I'm moving a lot. That's what I need. My body needs that. Some of y'all don't need all that. I need that. But I run. That first mile sucks every single time. Every time I go out to run that first mile, I am asking myself, why am I out here? I could be taking a nap right now. Erin, you just taught for 6 hours straight. Why are you out here? And I got to push through to that second mile. And the second mile, my left knee starts to hurt. And I'm like, Erin, you could just go home now. You're 49. You can hang it up. And no, I got to push through. If I can get to the third mile, I can actually go to 4 and 5 and 7 without stopping. I get into a rhythm. This work of equity is that. The first mile sucks every time. And I need you to push through it to mile 3 and 4 and 5, okay? And so I want you to embrace the discomfort. It is not uncomfortable for some of us. It is uncomfortable for everyone. So join me in the discomfort. Here's something that I'll tell you, though, about the discomfort. I do not show up into spaces with the posture to make people feel guilt, shame, and blame. I don't feel, those are not useful emotions in this work for me. So all the cancel culture stuff, I don't do. I don't call people racist. I don't think that's useful. And I'll just give you a kid analogy, a student analogy. I taught middle school most of my career. I actually started at Hunt Middle School, and then Baker Middle School, and then Jason Lee, and then Stewart. So I'm one of those crazy people that loves middle school kids. If I told a middle school child you are stupid, do you think they'd want to learn from me? No. Right? No kid wants to learn from a teacher that, now, I would tell some of my middle school children, what you just did there was stupid. That thing you did right there was dumb. And guess what? 12 and 13-year-olds always do dumb stuff. And I would tell them, that thing you did is dumb. You are not dumb, but that thing you just did right there was dumb. That was not, but their brains are not quite connected yet. So, like, I show them a lot of grace, but I still will say, don't do that again. That was not smart. Same thing with racism. I do not call people racist. I may say that thing you just said, whoa, that was kind of racist. I don't call people racist. I don't think that's useful. And so just know from me, I do not show up with this posture. I show up with this. I want to invite you into a conversation. Still may be uncomfortable for you, but I don't believe guilt, shame, and blame are useful emotions. And so should you at some point feel that, like, should you feel ashamed or somebody's volume is on. I hear babies. I get happy when I hear little kids, but okay. Should you feel shame, blame, or guilt at any point, I want you to feel it in your body and then pivot. Okay? Feel it in your body. Don't deny it. Say, oh, I'm feeling a little guilty here. Feel it in your body and then pivot. Pivot back to learning. Okay? And that's, I tell students this all the time. Like, if you're feeling dumb in a math class, feel that. Acknowledge, like, I'm just feeling a little less than smart. And then pivot back to, I can do this though. I can do this though. Okay, so we got to model that as adults. We talk about growth mindset for children all the time. Y'all, I can't tell you how many adults don't operate under growth mindset, but they telling kids every day, growth mindset, while you're not wanting to stretch yourself at all. We got to start with modeling. So as you feel guilt, shame, and blame, feel it, pivot away. Okay. I want to assume that everyone has the best intentions here. And if today or tomorrow or next week you say something offensive to someone and they call you on it, instead of getting defensive and saying, oh, but I didn't mean that. Why are you taking that so seriously? I was just joking. Just say you're sorry. I am sorry. It's not easy, but it's free. It's free. We don't say that enough. We get all defensive, and just stop with that. Just say you're sorry. Last two things. Show grace for yourself. When you make a mistake, which you will, y'all. I make mistakes. So if I make mistakes, y'all are going to make mistakes at some point. Show grace for yourself. And for those of you that are further along in this journey, show grace for others who are not as far as you. This whole cancel culture thing is not helpful for us, right? And we do a lot of that cancel. Like, we blast people who say stuff. And guess what? That person now is not going to learn. So let's not do that. Grace, 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 grace for yourself and everyone else. Last one, and possibly most important. Have a posture of curiosity. And here's what I mean by that. I have a friend that I met when I ran for office 4 years ago. We actually didn't physically meet until last year, but he'd been following me on social media. Shared a story with me that he was raised by neo-Nazis in Hayden Lake, Idaho. Now, if you know anything about Hayden Lake, Idaho, they made the news a while ago, many years ago, for being neo-Nazis. This man was raised by neo-Nazis. He started following me when I ran for political office, and he messaged me about 2 years ago and said, Erin, you don't know me. I don't ever respond on your posts because people may know who I am, and I don't want to out myself, but here's a little bit of my story. I think you love well, and I'm trying to learn to love like you. If you ever happen to be in Spokane, I will come see you. Well, I happened to be speaking in Spokane last year at the National Day of Prayer, and he brought his entire family from Colville, Washington, down to watch me speak. And when it was over, he and his bride and his brand new baby and his 15-year-old son took me out for coffee. This man's story is so absolutely different from me. And I could have said, man, you are super conservative Republican, but instead I took a posture of curiosity. How did you get to here? What about your story caused you to believe what you believe? Do you know now he's been kicked out of his church in Colville because he talked to his pastor about the danger of white supremacy and about how he needs to better love people who are not like him? And he's now going to a Black church in Spokane. Because I and some other folks got curious about his story. Instead of saying, oh, super conservative Republican, former neo-Nazi, right? And so I want to encourage us, especially right now, in the face of where we are as a country right now, I want to encourage you, however you voted, for those people in your world right now that voted a different way, and you're a bit pissed off right now, I want to encourage you, instead of being angry, get curious. Get curious. Wow, why? What brought you to that? Like, what made you make that decision? Right? Imagine what our world would be like if we were more curious, instead of, man, you voted that way, you must be a racist. Or you voted that way, you must be a baby killer. Right? Imagine if we just got curious. So what if we taught children, when they see skin color that's different, or gender differences, or hair, like my hair, I got to do a little rabbit trail because this is totally appropriate for children. So I was speaking in Roy, Washington last year, right before COVID, and I spoke to a whole K-8 system, so every grade level. And I walk into the kindergarten assembly. It's just kindergartners and preschoolers, and this little white girl says, "Oh my gosh, she has hair like a clown." Now, I could have gotten mad, but here's what I knew. This little girl had only ever seen hair like mine on a clown. So her natural connection. And so I walked right up to her. I got on my knees because I'm 6 feet tall, y'all. You can't see that in the screen, but I'm a giant. And this poor little preschool 4-year-old child would have been terrified if I walked up to her and all myself. So I got down right eye level with her and I said, "I am not a clown. My hair grows exactly like this." And she said, "Well, I have pretty golden hair. My mommy says my hair is the best." And I said, "What if your hair and my hair are really awesome? What if they're both really awesome?" Do you know, when I was done sharing my story, that little girl, little 4 or 5-year-old, I don't know, she was preschool or kindergarten, stayed around afterwards. And she was now curious, right? Because I didn't get all offended with her. I came down to her level and I was calm. What if we taught our children to just get curious? What if we just got curious? And so I want to share in this space today, as we talk about hard things, what if we were to just get curious? I absolutely believe our greatest learning comes when we're just curious. And so I want to encourage us to take that posture. So gratitude, community agreements. This next thing is a strategy that I use, and Farron kind of alluded to this, but I actually have a practice of grounding in. So here's what I want you to do. If you have anything in your hands, I want you to put it down. Get your hands either in your lap or on the table in front of you. Sit up as straight as you're physically able to. Get your feet as flat on the floor as you're physically able to. If you're able to and feel comfortable closing your eyes, please close your eyes. If not, if you got little people running around, please do not close your eyes. Keep your eyes on them, okay? But if you are uncomfortable closing your eyes, find a spot in the wall and just focus on that spot in the wall. We're just gonna take 30 seconds to focus on the air in and out of our bodies. This is called grounding, and it's a way to check in with yourself. I want you to focus just on the air in and out of your body. Let go of all the thoughts from this morning. Let go of thoughts about what you're gonna do this afternoon. And just take 30 seconds to focus on the air in and out of your body. I'm gonna cue us in saying, take a deep breath in, blow it out. I will count to 30 in my head, that I'll cue us back in. Take a deep breath in, blow it out. Take a deep breath in, blow it out. Take a deep breath in, blow it out. Shake a little bit, stretch. So I use that strategy. I started using it when I ran for office, and I'll tell you why. Maybe you're better than me, but I don't respond well in the moment if I'm really emotional. So in debates, they love to ask that question that will just like get to you. And my husband would text me in the middle of a debate and he'd say, "Honey, fix your face, because I show it all on my face." And if I responded in the moment, I never responded really thoughtfully. Like, I mean, I'm a good speaker, but I still was not super thoughtful. But what I learned in debates is, if I could use the first 5 seconds of my 2-minute response time to just ground in after that hard question was asked, my response was much better than if I just jumped in with a response. So I want you to think about this moment in time and politics and just the world right now. How often do we respond in the moment when we could just check in for a little bit? And you know what? Maybe you check in and realize, I don't need to respond to that tweet. I don't actually need to respond on Facebook that way. Like once you ground in, you realize, you know what, there's nothing thoughtful that I can say right here that's going to make a difference. And what if we were to teach our students to do that? So my students in my class, we practice this. And I tell them, like before you mouth off to your little sister or to your mama, I need you to ground in, like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And it really is helping them strategize how to respond. But what if we were to model that in social media? What if we were to model that with our spouses or partners or whoever's in our little homes that we're stuck with every day right now, right? So that ground in strategy is really powerful, especially when you're about to have a really hard conversation. So this conversation around race, I always have people practice grounding in. So in the chat, here's what I'm gonna ask you to do. If your last name begins with the letters A to F as in father, I want you to type out, what do you think the word diversity means? In the context of education, what do you think the word and don't Google it. I don't want some Harvard definition, okay? No Harvard definitions, no Webster's dictionary definitions. Just what does it mean to you? Diversity, okay? A to F. If your last name begins with G to M as in mother, G to M, what do you think culturally responsive practice means? Culturally responsive practice. And if you don't know, make something up, okay? There's no grade for this. Make something up. Culturally responsive practice. That's G to M as in mother. N to Z, how would you define equity? And not home equity, not housing equity, racial equity. How would you define equity? N to Z, how would you define equity? So go ahead and take a minute, type your answers out into the chat. Let's see what you got. Again, don't Google it. There's no wrong answers here. Just what do you think it means? Make sure you read what other people write. Take another 30 seconds. Okay, awesome. Okay, if you've been in education for more than 20 years, back 30 years ago when I started, diversity was really just race. That's all, when the word diversity was brought up, it was just race. I'd say about 20 years ago, then it was about race and gender, socioeconomics. Now it's everything. Like it's sexual orientation, it's language spoken at home, it's learning styles, it's neurodiversity, like it's all the things, right? Here's what's important about diversity, the word diversity. It often is just the superficial stuff. It's often referring to things that we can see, and it's often about compliance. And especially when you work in government programs or state programs or city programs, it's about checking boxes, right? Like we have this many Black students we're serving, this many Asian students we're serving, this many males, this many females, that kind of stuff. Not a bad thing, but it's a beginning, it's not an end. Diversity is a beginning, it's not an end, okay? Also, diversity can be things like the superficial ways we celebrate the difference. And here's my pet peeve. I speak at more Martin Luther King events than probably anyone in Washington State. I usually have about 24, 25 every year. So over the course of 2 weeks, I do 23 or 24 speeches for MLK. MLK Day has become about diversity. Let's check the box. By the way, he's an American hero who happens to be Black. It's not just the Black People Day. But that's what it's become, is this diversity kind of superficial, let's check the box. I'm also going to warn us that this month is Native American History Month. That has become and can become, check the box. We've done our duty to the Native American people. No, we haven't. If the only time we're talking about Native American people is in November, because it's Thanksgiving, do we even know the history of that and what that means to our Native American brothers and sisters? Do we realize they did not live in the past, they live in the present right among us, especially Tacoma, right? So we gotta acknowledge that oftentimes the way we do diversity, it's very superficial, and it's about compliance. So it's a beginning. I'm not saying don't acknowledge this month, and I'm not saying don't do, I'm okay, but I'm saying also don't pat yourself on the back, because you've done, that is a beginning step. It's a baby step. Culturally responsive practice. Most of you got most of it. Most people, when talk about, it's making sure we adapt and adjust our programming to meet the cultural needs of the students around us. Here's what we miss though. Really important, I want you to hear this. You also bring a culture to the table. And this is a piece that we miss all the time. We think it's about them. And in particular, the brown people. Culturally responsive practice is about meeting the needs of the brown people, but not being aware that we bring something to the table too. And I mean, y'all white people too, like every one of us on this call, we all bring something to the table. And if you don't know your actual culture, do you know if you don't know your culture, you can't actually appreciate someone else's. If you don't think you have a culture, it is almost impossible for you to truly appreciate someone else's. You can tolerate it. You can tolerate it. You can't really appreciate it if you don't realize you also bring something to the table. And so culturally responsive practice means that you have to actually realize you bring a culture to the table too. And I will send Erin, I have a tool that I created called the Personal Cultural Inventory. And it helps people unpack their culture, because I find that especially white people don't think they have culture. And you do. And it's pervasive. Part of the reason you don't think you have culture is because you're swimming in it all day. And I'm just going to give this example. For middle-class white folks, you are fish swimming in water. And so if you were to ask a fish, describe the water, I don't know that the fish would even be able to describe, because the water's everywhere, right? Like it's just swimming. But guess what? Now we got turtles and alligators and crocodiles and birds who can't just swim in the water all day. Like they have to get out of the water. And so guess what? The alligator could probably describe the water, because the alligator needs to know the water and the land and the air, right? Whereas the fish, all the fish needs to know is the water. That's what's happening in so many spaces. The fish don't realize the water is the water, because it's all they need. And the water works for them at home, and it works for them in school, and it works for them in church, and it works for them everywhere. And so they don't even realize the water is the thing. They just think the water is normal. That's just, the whole world is water. Well, no, the whole world is not water. So I'm going to send Miss Fran a cultural inventory. I want to encourage y'all to take it. And it's something I give away for free, because I am so passionate that people understand we all bring culture to the table. We all have it. And we can't change it if we don't know we have it. The greatest danger is that most middle-class white people don't realize they bring something to the table, because it's been so normalized that don't even, and then you're spraying it everywhere like a skunk, just spraying it everywhere, but you can't smell it because you're around it all the time. It's like being a funky 13-year-old boy with your body odor, right? You don't, I smell, I like honey, you stink. and I'm not saying middle-class white culture stinks. I'm just saying, when you're around it all the time, you may not even realize it exists, right? And I want y'all to know it exists and be able to unpack what is it, okay? So that's culturally responsive practice, knowing yourself and then adapting to meet the needs of the others around you. Third thing, equity. It's about how do we ensure everyone thrives? Everyone thrives, everyone. It's not just about Black and brown people. It's not just about women. How, because America has the scarcity mentality, and if we give Black people a piece of a pie, then it'd be less for us. No, it's not a pie. There is enough for everyone. So it's about how do we create space where everyone thrives, everybody thrives, okay? And the difference between culturally responsive practice and equity is we got to look at systems. Culturally responsive practice is just me and the students I serve, or me in my building. Equity is about looking at all of the systems that are intertwined and interconnected. And it requires that we interrogate systems and figure out where are the barriers and where are the opportunities to build bridges. Where are the barriers to tear down and where are the opportunities to build bridges. Okay, so that is diversity, culturally responsive practice, equity. Now, how I frame the conversation around equity, and you all will get this PowerPoint, is I frame it in 3 circles. So if you were to imagine 3 circles that have one intersection in the middle, the top circle, the very first thing, the most important work of equity, you're going to be surprised by this, but the most important work is actually your personal story. Typically, when we talk about equity, people want to jump to systems. I want to go write new policy and fix discipline. But guess what? If you don't realize that you have glasses on with a particular lens, you will fix the system based on your lens. And you will try to give everybody else the same glasses you have. But guess what? Everybody else doesn't need your glasses. And in fact, you're not even aware you're wearing glasses. So I need you to do the work of figuring out what are the lenses that I have on? How do I see the world? How do I move through the world? How have I been racialized? How have I experienced my gender identity? All of those things, you have got to do that work first. Because otherwise you come in like a bull in a china shop. You got this big old story and you don't even know you have it. And you're trying to fix stuff and you don't even understand what you're fixing. So you have to do your own personal work first. Secondly, you have to understand the community you're serving. And you have to be willing to face, who am I serving well? Who am I not serving well? Who am I not serving at all? Like they are just not, we are not serving them. And I'll just be honest, I just did another keynote this morning and I told them, in Washington State, the community we're not serving at all is our Native community. Because we have erased them. We've made them past tense and they're right here. They're right here in our community. And often they don't come to get services. They don't show up at things, right? Because we have no relationship with them. So first, you got to know yourself. Secondly, who are the communities that we're not connecting with? And who are the leaders in those communities that I could connect to build bridges for me? I need bridge builders. You can't know every community, but there are experts in each community that could help you understand the needs of that community. And only then, when you have those voices in your ear, can you have any chance of writing policy or changing practice in any meaningful way. Because guess what? They don't want your lenses. Their thriving doesn't look like yours. I'll never forget when I was teaching in North Philadelphia, and I don't remember how this conversation started, but I had an older teacher, a Black woman, said, she wasn't talking to me, but she was talking around me. Man, why do we assume that all these kids want to live like middle-class white people? Right? I mean, the 2,000-foot home with the picket fence is not everyone's idea of success. But that's the image we have in our head, right? Like the dog and the 2 kids and the home that we own somewhere with land. So what if some of the communities you're serving, their thriving looks different from yours? But guess what? You won't know that unless you know their stories. And their stories should inform how we're writing policy. And that's why equity is so hard, because it requires we got to dig into our closets and skeletons and all that mess. And then we got to actually go talk to people that we don't know, who may actually be pretty skeptical of us because we've never come to them before for good reasons, right? We want to do stuff to them, not with them. We want to get co-signed for stuff that is really doing a lot of harm. So I want to encourage you to do your own self-work first. And I want to encourage you to then get out and here's the challenge. We're in the middle of COVID. And so I tell people all the time, 70% of white people do not have a Black or brown friend. So just because you work with someone Black or brown does not mean they're your friend. If you've not been to their house for a meal, if they've not been to your house, you're probably acquaintances. But 70% of white people in America do not have a Black or brown friend. So to be honest, I'm not surprised where we are as a country. Because here's the thing I believe. Without relationship, we can't build bridges. Like, you can't build bridges without authentic relationship. And you can't build authentic relationship if you're not sitting in the mess with people, right? I am a Black woman who was raised by white people. My white parents, and married to a Black man. My white parents are all about this racial justice stuff because they got skin in the game. Their daughter is being treated in very different ways than they are treated. And so my parents, because of our relationship, because I am their daughter, are fighting, right? Whose skin is in the game? For you. And if you don't have relationship, so first, don't go to Tacoma Mall and walk up to the next Black or brown person and say, I need a Black friend. Please don't do that. That's not wise. Don't do that. But during this COVID season, here's what I would ask you. Who are you following on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn? If your circle of friends looks exactly like you, and that's the same for us Black folks, if all your friends are Black and all your friends have the same beliefs, I want to challenge you. One of the best things you can do, especially right now, right after this election season, is to start following some people who are really different from you. And I've been really intentional about that because I know this is my work. So my Facebook page, again, I told you I have neo-Nazi guy on he's former neo-Nazi, but still, like, I got him on my page and I got super left-wing liberal on my page. I'm very intentional about hearing from all those and building relationship over years with all those people. So y'all are in Tacoma. If you've seen the big sign by Tacoma Mall, Jesus Cares About You, that's our church. So my husband has been in ministry there off and on for the last 23 years. So we sit in that space, 70% white people, 30% Black and brown people, 70% Republican, 30% not. So I want you to imagine what that last 3 months have been like. Not fun. I'll just tell you, not fun. Yeah, it's been like trying to keep my head above water. It's not been fun. But here's what I'll tell you. I am very intentional about holding on to those relationships though, because here's another truth. We could let go of all those people who were other. How are they ever going to come to know better if we are not in relationship? It's hard though, y'all. That's why I got to ground in and run a lot. Told you, I practice discomfort because this work is not easy. So during this COVID time, when you can't personally be in relationship with new people, follow some new people. One of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to send Erin in the PowerPoint, the very last slide is a list of books and podcasts and movies and TV shows and websites to do your research. Do your research. Okay, right now when you can't be around people, learn about people. Learn about people who are different from you. Read books by authors who don't look like you, who don't sound like you, who haven't lived in this country like you have. We've got to be committed to learning about people. Then you can talk about policy and practice. Not until then, though. We want to jump to that policy and practice. Here's the last thing I'll say, and then I'd love to open up for some questions. You know, social emotional learning has been used as a weapon in a lot of places to ask all of our Black and brown and poor children to just assimilate to white behavior norms. And that's incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous. And it doesn't take bad people to weaponize self. It takes uninformed, naive people to weaponize self. And right now, we can't afford, those of us who are educators can't afford to be uninformed. So you are training for a marathon right now. I am training for a marathon right now. And it means we got to do a little bit every day, a little bit every day, a little bit every day. We got to learn with one another. So as you read a book with someone else, talk to them about it, ask questions, get brave and courageous, ask the questions that you've been afraid to ask. We can do this, y'all. We can do this. I'm going to end with 3 words that I share in every space that I go into that are just, I think every year I have 3 new words that are kind of moving me. But these 3 words I've been moving with since June now. humility, humanity, and history. So I show up with the humility that I don't know it all. I don't know it all. I'm a fellow sojourner. I'm traveling with you all on this journey. I don't know it all. I am not the expert. I haven't arrived. I'm still learning too. I'm reading books. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm still learning too. I failed and I have to get back up. I also have the humility that I can't do it by myself. I need to link arms with y'all and do the work with people. And so I'm connected to people like Erin, and Antonio and I do work for another foundation. And I link arms with as many people as I can because I know the work is too big for me to do it by myself. So that's humility. Humanity. I center intentionally the humanity of every person that I come around. I try to. There are times when it's really hard, when I'm like, you are crazy. But I try to center the humanity of every person and to believe that they are equally valuable to me. However they voted, however they show up, however they talk to me. I want to intentionally choose to love people. I call it courageous love. It's not the mushy kind of love. It's a choice of actions, how I'm going to treat people, regardless of how they choose to treat me. It's how I try to show up in every space. So humility, humanity, and then history. All of us have a history. All of us have a story. Guess what? Every organization also has a story. Your organization has a story. Public education has a history to it. Who has been served well, who's not been served well. Here's the truth. We cannot fix what we're not willing to face. We cannot fix what we're not willing to face. And so part of our history is we have to be willing to look at all the pieces of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and say, ooh, that piece there, I got to work on that. And we all have that ugly in our story. Every institution has the ugly in the story, right? But we can't fix it if we're not willing to look it in the face and say, you know what? I can do better than that. I can do better than that. So I'm going to stop there and leave some time for some questions. So if you have questions, I would love to answer questions, and you can either type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself, and I'd love to hear voices because I've been hearing my own voice a lot. So I would love to hear some actual voices of real people.
I'll start off the questions because I did get one text into me, so I'll just share it with you. It says that SEL, I've heard that SEL can be problematic in that it centers around the individual students needing to learn a set of behaviors and acting according to a set of white institutional standards. Can you speak to that a little bit? Why folks would think, I mean, you touched on it just a little bit.
Yeah.
But, can you kind of talk a little more around that?
Absolutely. So I think what has happened with social emotional learning programs in a lot of ways, it goes back to if middle class white values have become the norm, then what happens with social emotional learning is that that's what we try to get students to behave according to the norm, without realizing that really that's just, we're expecting kids to assimilate to a set of cultural norms. That's not good or bad, right? The job of social emotional learning should be about checking in with yourself and being your best self. One of my messages and I do a lot of talking to social emotional learning programs and providers. Children cannot be their best selves if they cannot be their full selves. I'm gonna say that again. Children cannot be. In fact, you cannot be your best self if you can't be your full self. And so if social emotional learning is being used as a tool to assimilate to middle class white values, then if you're not middle class or white, what we're asking you to do then is leave a piece of yourself outside of the school building, and you can't be your best self. But because so many white people haven't interrogated their culture, when they see SEL, they don't even realize that's what's happening. So again, it doesn't take bad teachers to weaponize SEL. It takes uninformed, naive teachers who are not aware that they're spraying these kids with their skunks, spraying kids with all this stinky stuff and not even aware that that's what they're doing. So that's part of my mission right now, is to speak into SEL program developers to share that story. I know Dina does a lot of that work too. I mean, there's a lot of people around the country that are now doing that work. And it gets to something that I know Antonio and I work for Character Strong. You know, Character Strong until this year was trying to just not be racist. At this point, they're trying to be anti-racist. You see the difference? So they were before just trying to not be racist. Now they're realizing, oh my gosh, we have to be anti-racist. And that's a very different conversation. You can't be neutral on this. You can't be neutral on this. There's no neutral ground. Like if you just sit back and say, well, I'm not that bad person, you are part of the problem. We got to jump in. And here's what that means. When you jump in, you may mess it up sometimes. That's okay. It's okay for kids to mess up. It's okay for us to mess up. We got to model that willingness to step in it sometimes and then to get back up. Y'all, I lost a major election. I tried out for 2 WNBA teams and did not get selected by either team. I'm still alive, right? Like, I am all about trying hard things. I don't ask my students to do what I'm not willing to do. We have to lead the way with our own actions of how we show up and how we choose to engage.
Thank you, ma'am. Feel free to unmute yourself if there's any more questions. Antonio, you have any questions?
Antonio gets to see me every week, so he's So brave spaces, y'all. What's the question you've been wanting to ask? That you're like, I don't know. Now's the time.
Process is good. Thinking about it is good. This is not the last of the sessions. So let me just mark December 4th on your calendars right now, because we're going to continue this conversation in this PD series. So if you're not ready and you just need to understand and hear and ground, this is the purpose of why we started this series off with Erin, because she brings you to real life. You know, SEL is a way of being, how you show up, you know, and it has to have all of those elements that she talked about, or else it could potentially do harm. And we're not trying to do that right now. It's enough. We gotta reform, you know, and restructure. We don't have time to keep digging in, you know, systems that are not going to be helpful for the folks, the young people that we serve. And know that it's an adult practice, inner work first. And we're going to transition to that. So if there's any more questions.
Oh, Antonio's got one now.
Okay, go ahead, Antonio. Go ahead.
So, I thought because I get to share so many great spaces with Erin that I wouldn't hog up all the time. But I think, and this is something that I've been mindful of in some of my proximity to the DEI work and equity work, as it pertains to SEL work. But one of the things that I'm realizing is we spend a lot of time talking about bringing equity to our educational spaces as it pertains to relating to the students in the classroom. But there's not a lot of work that we do surrounding, you know, people of color that are in workspaces. There's a school that I consult with, and I was a part of their first hiring of a Black teacher in the last 60 years. And he loves the school, but when I call him to update, you know, get an update, he's like, yeah, I love the school, but I'm getting pulled out of my office for counseling duties, principal duties, and he's a special ed teacher. So he's like, I don't even really get to work with my kids because I'm now the staff member for an entire campus. And so can you maybe speak to some of the realities and how as educators we can support other educators like yourself that are doing the work, carrying the load, and educating other, you know, in white spaces and decolonizing those and the weight that we have to carry, and how maybe some of our white brothers and sisters or allies in their work of anti-racist can support those that are actually doing the work in our spaces.
So I appreciate you sharing that. We have actually less Black teachers in public education in Washington State than we've ever had in the history of the state. And part of it is because of that, because Black teachers are often one of two in their school building, and they are charged not only with teaching their class, but doing all the discipline of every Black child in the building and doing the Martin Luther King Assembly and Black History Month. And so I do a lot of training in teacher education programs, training teachers of the professors to get them to really interrogate their practice. And I actually believe when hiring, that we should never hire one Black or brown teacher in a building. They should always be hired as a cohort, so that it's not, they don't feel like they on their own have to bear the weight of all of that. And so that is a huge conversation, and one that I have in every teacher ed program. I actually do a lot of teaching of principals and their principal credential programs, and that's something that I talk about with them all the time. And that's real. I mean, the adult stuff is really important, and being a Black or brown teacher right now. Last thing I'll say about that is when I went online live in March, my first adults in my class were the Black and brown teachers who just wanted to see another Black face. They're like, Erin, we come every day because we just need to see your face. And I'll never forget, I got a call from a teacher in Tacoma Public Schools that I taught with the very first time I substitute taught in a building. He was in the classroom next door to me, so I've known this guy for 22 years. And he called me in March crying. And this is a ball player. Like, this guy is the man. He's such a rock star. And he called me crying and said, I did not realize how much I couldn't breathe. This is before George Floyd. He said, I didn't realize how much I couldn't breathe until I got into my house and I could just be me teaching from home. I want you to think about that. I could not breathe. And then George Floyd happens. Like, this is before George Floyd even. I will tell you, I've talked to more Black, so I hold space for Black teachers every Saturday afternoon, every Saturday, since March. I've been holding space for Black teachers every Saturday afternoon to just hold space. But almost all of them say to me, we're so glad we're not in the building right now, because the white space is killing us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, I know I need to let y'all go because it's 2:15 and you got another speaker, but thanks for having me today. I appreciate y'all.
We appreciate
Thank you. Finger snaps, Miss Erin Jones, y'all. We'll make sure we get some resources that she talked a little bit about. We'll make sure we get that out to you all. And I do just want to let you guys know that you may not be a teacher in the in-school space, but you are in the expanded learning space. You educating too, you know. So when she speaks that, she's speaking to all of us who are in these spaces with young people, regardless of where in the space you are. And so all of these things can be implemented where you are, and one day at a time. Don't try to do it all, and start where you are. So we appreciate you, Erin. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Yes. So we'll transition. I'm gonna hand it back to Megan if you want to get us
All right.
something to get us rolling into the next segment.
So to live our SEL values, I'm going to encourage that we do a little stretch break in between the two so that we keep our minds sharp and that we're ready to hear all of the good knowledge that Miik is bringing to us. So I'm going to try to stand up in my space. I don't know if you'll be able to see me with my crazy background, so we'll see. Yep, I think you can see me. So I'm going to start by touching my toes. So if you're sitting or standing, you can just lean over and touch your toes. Feel a good stretch there. Oh, raise your hands over your head, get tall, shake those hands out, shake your arms out, shake your head, get your hair all crazy, it's okay. And then just take a big, deep, cleansing breath. If you need, to take a minute here and refill your water, go take a break, it's all right. And then you can just jump back in. But I'm going to keep us rolling so that Miik has all the time that he needs to share with us. So I'm going to pass the mic. We have a wonderful presenter coming to do inner equity with us. He is an experienced trainer. If you follow School About Washington, they have been really highlighting some of the cool trainings and work that he does. And we are so lucky and excited to have him in our space today. So I am gonna just hand it over to Miik Wells.
Thank you very much. And I see what you did there with Pastor Miik. That was nice. All right.
Glad you caught that.
Yeah. Hey everybody, my name is Miik Wells. That stretch break was important. So if you didn't do it, I'm gonna give you another 30 seconds to make that happen. I mean, we're gonna be doing a practice. I'm gonna guide us through a practice in a little bit after I talk a little bit, but take that, because Erin, I mean, that's a whole lot of info. That's a whole lot of knowledge. That's a whole lot of wisdom. That's a whole lot of experience. That's a whole lot of beauty that just got downloaded onto the brain, and that needs to work its way through. So stretch yourself, breathe yourself, move yourself, get that in there. Don't let it just sit up there. You're gonna topple over. All right. Now, I'm gonna start off by saying Erin's a runner. Erin's a runner. I'm a mosier. So it's beautiful that we have that kind of bookend going on there, because I mean, it was beautiful to move alongside Erin, and I'm tired. I'm really tired. So glad I get to mosey. So my work, inner equity, came up with the equity work that I was doing. That was all about having conversations with people, bringing difference into the room, and seeing and facilitating those conversations. I'm a facilitator. I'm pretty damn good at it. And one of the things that I found is, and Erin spoke to a whole lot of things that I'm going to touch on as well, that when difference gets highlighted, there's our contraction and our retraction away from it. And then everything kind of shuts down, and there's no information that's coming in anymore. And I was thinking to myself, okay, how and where would equity work where somebody can't escape? Where can you not escape equity work? Because I mean, people can escape other cultures. People can escape difference. They can just, blind it out, numb it. They can avoid it in so many different ways. And then I thought, well, I mean, the systems really live inside of us. All the conditioning, all the programming, it lives inside of us. There's a way that the hierarchy works inside of us. There's a way that oppression and domination happens inside of us. Let me seek inside. And I found something. A little bit about me. I go by he, him, his, and my lineage is Black and Indigenous. Now, those are two cultures that I hold, that are in me, that my roots have been ripped up from place and from land. And so when I was even thinking about searching my lineage, it's either relying on the record keeping or not, that the cultures that dominated and ripped those cultures up have. And it's like going to them for that, and then having to keep on programming and reprogramming and everything like that intellectually and cognitively. Or I can say, you know what, that the cultures live in me. It's in my DNA, it's in my blood, it's in my marrow. And I can actually, if I tap in, though my ancestors, my feel, the lives that I've lived that are encoded in me will come forward. And so that's more of that inner piece. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit of something. When I talked about the systems living in us, we have a hierarchy. Inner equity is all about leveraging the compartments that we get put in for better control, for more uniform ways of moving us through the systems as they exist. The hierarchy: mental, physical, emotional, and social. Social emotional learning here at the bottom. And if you look at the top, mental and physical, that's what school usually is. I mean, school is, mental is the key and the core. You got to get the programming in somehow, right? It's the software. You got to write that. You have to write that up. And then the physical is kind of like secondary. It's like, okay, we got PE. We'll let them run around in the schoolyard and everything like that. And then we say, oh yeah, they're gonna get their social just by being in the petri dish of being outside and roughing up each other and everything, and then we'll bring down the domination, and that's where we'll put a little bit more domination in, because we'll have the punishment, They'll have the consequence for the things that you're still learning how to do: share, be with each other, cooperate, etc. But we're going to go ahead and put punishment in there anyway. That's how people learn, right? They learn through punishment. So there's this hierarchy here, mental being the top. And I've broken this down along a lot of the different privilege lines. If we're looking at race, if we're looking at social economic status and everything like that, there's that hierarchy that just kind of goes parallel with each one of these pieces. Erin talked about culture and white culture. A lot of what I've seen and what my perspective is on white culture is it's very mentally dominated. If it's not clean, if it's not right angles, if it's not binary, like the physical isn't, emotional isn't, relationships aren't, then it's messy and it must be punished. It must be put in line. We got to manicure the lawn. we got to make sure that even if you're happy, you don't be too happy now. Only grieve for a little bit now. Your relationships, they can only be this way, right? You don't do this in public. And we don't, and who here has taught like how to begin a relationship and how to end a relationship? You just kind of find yourself into one, right? Or you just watch it on TV, or you see it through your family, all that programming that happens right up here. And then it gets like kind of filtered down. It's not even filtered down, it gets dominated down. So my work of inner equity is really about highlighting each one of these different cultures, as it were. You can even think of them as individual people. I have a mental self, I have a physical self, I have an emotional self, and I have a social self. Each one has a different language. My physical self doesn't talk like my mental self does. The body moves. It moves and it rests. That's its language. Mental thinks, concentrates, makes connections. Emotions are energy. They show up in the body as certain things. Anger shows up in a certain way. Happy shows up in a certain way, but for each individual person. Happy shows up in my body in a different way than it shows up in your body because of socialization and et cetera and so forth. Our relationships and our relational self, there's things that we are drawn to and there's things that we're drawn away from. That's its own language. How many different ways do we feel a draw away from someone that we make ourselves be in closer relationship to? It's a different language that mental self doesn't necessarily want to pay attention to, or may not even know what the language is. And it says, well, there's opportunity here, so we're going to go ahead and do this. Even though social self is saying, nope, this is not a good idea. Physical self wants to move. I want to go for a walk. And our inertia or whatever else says, we don't have time for that. We're not going to do that. Physical self says, hey, maybe eat a vegetable. And I'm like, yeah, but vegetables, I haven't eaten them now. I haven't eaten before, so why start now? And then we end up with a certain, food diseases and things like that. So what I do with my work is I guide folks individually and in groups through activities that highlight each one of these different dimensions of self, so that we can pay attention to what the language is that each one speaks, and we can have more of that internal conversation. I talked about how Erin is a runner and I am a mosier. A lot of the ways that we all have ended up the way that we are in our socializations is we're running at the speed of dehumanization, the speed of capitalism, the speed of patriarchy, the speed of ableism, the speed of all of it. And the thing about speed is when you move fast, you revert to the thing that you practice the most. And the thing that we practice the most is the thing that we learn in school. You sit your ass down, so the body is disconnected. You engage your brain, and that's the only way that it works. So if the body gets activated and you do the thing that you already know not to do, then you're going to get punished, even though the physical doesn't really know it because we didn't really integrate it in a physical way. So that speed is a great way to trap us. The mosey, the slow down, the pause, the breath that Erin talked about. that breath, that 5 seconds, what'd she say, 15 seconds or 5 seconds? The 5 seconds of breath that she took between the question, a hard question being asked and getting that activation, and then her answer, that 5 seconds was a pattern interrupt of that speed of patriarchy, that speed of politics. It's like, you know what? Let me feel through what all of me has to say. Let me hear, let me feel, let me know what all of me has to say. Let me collaborate on that message, and then let me put it out. Because if I just respond, I'm gonna go with the speed. I'm gonna go with that activation. What happens to my mind in activation? There's only a certain number of pathways that work when I'm angry, when I'm upset, when I need to destroy something. My work is about slowing down. My work is, I like using this analogy. A lot of American movies, they cut the training and the practice time to a montage. You get to see that nice little 5-minute montage with the music, and you get to see the different scenes and all those other things. And I'm thinking about Rocky right now, but there's so many other different things where the montage is the training that's happening, and then he shows up all Superman after getting his ass kicked. I mean, excuse me, but I'm not cuss. I just do. But the transition time is cut short. We don't get a lot of visual, audio, or even experience in practice being a norm, being a part of the way that we move and the way that we work. I love anime, and one of the beautiful things I love about anime is they show the harsh, the bumps and the bruises, the learning, the mistakes and all that, up until they get to a place where it's like, oh, I figured it out. And then they go on that super journey, and you know how it all works because you've seen it all. A lot of the ways that our cultures are, we don't get to see it all. And then we judge ourselves like, I can't do that. Well, yeah, because you didn't see the 10 years that it took for somebody to get to the place that they're at, because it's not shown. It's not shown in our TV. It's not shown in our movies. It's not spoken about even on our radio. So when I do my work, it's really about taking that pause and saying, all right, we're going to take this pause here. And my encouragement is that whenever you get the opportunity, you take that pause to stop and listen, because the speed of capitalism, speed of patriarchy, speed of dehumanization will get you. It's easy to get you too. All you gotta do is just say like 5 words really fast, and then you're right there. Attention is peaked, mind is like, yep, ready. And the rest of us are like, do we have to again? Physical, emotional, and social selves are like, come on. You're screaming at a tree to grow. You're screaming at a carrot to grow. You're screaming at plants to grow and move and go at the speed of a mind that connects all the things. But the mind is connecting all of these things on the outside and controlling all the things on the inside, and then trying to control all the things on the outside. What if we use our minds to make the connection, learn the language of ourselves, facilitate the conversation inside of ourselves? And that's where I'm gonna go. Now, this part, what I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna invite you to participate and interact fully with yourself in this. The more that you're able to be with yourself in it, and I recognize that we have traumas, we have different abilities, we have different ways that we even speak to ourselves, and there's ways that we've abused ourselves that are like, you know what, I'm really not going to do this embodiment piece because my body does not like me, or my body doesn't work the way that others do, and we relate in a different way. So you don't have to do that, but as much as you can, interact with. I'm going to guide us through. I'm going to speak in directive terms and just go with it. And if there's a different way that you speak to yourself in doing the thing that I'm asking you to do, default to you. Always default to you. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to guide through. Another thing that I've done this, I do this a lot in person, not this year, of course, but one of the things I do is I have everybody turn away from each other so you're not being self-conscious by having somebody else watch you be with yourself. That's, again, another one of those things that we get robbed of in this culture, is not being intimate with ourselves alongside other people. We have one person that we're closely intimate with, and then we have like a few friends that we can be somewhat intimate with. But the intimacy that I'm inviting us into is one that's like, ooh, I don't want to do this around other people. But the whole thing is that the thing is, if we don't do it with other people, we're not really even doing it, because there's that social aspect as well. So when I move us into this, you feel free to turn your video off so you can just be with yourself, and you don't have to worry about other eyes watching you and judging you. You know, whether you're making noises, whether you're moving in different weird ways, or whatever it is like that, so that you can just be with yourself. I'm gonna have you grab a piece of like a clean sheet of paper, and what you'll do with that is just write down, like, oh yeah, I'll do it that way. Just simple top, and maybe do it the long way so you have a lot more room. MPER, and you can do it however you want to. You can divide the page into four boxes or whatever like that, just so you have a place to jot down anything that comes up for mental, physical, emotional, and relational. I use relational usually, but since we're in social emotional learning, it's social. Y'all know what social means. When I say social outside of this context, people are talking about they're talking about oh, you mean like getting to know people, introvert, extrovert? I'm like, no, I'm not talking about that. I talk about relational. We're talking about connections. We're talking about moving in and out and that, but social means that here. So mental, physical, emotional, social. When we get to the place where you're gonna document what it is that comes up, my ask is that you keep it really short. No paragraphs, use symbols, draw things. If you have other colors of pens, use that, but something that will give you the context of what was shown. So you know, when you look at it, it's like, okay, that's what that means. I don't have to, write 5 sentences on what this thing means, because that's more of that mental. That's more of the mental being able to take over and translating for, and maybe not even doing a true translation of what the body is saying. Body is saying one thing, mental makes a translation. It's like, that's not what I said. Yeah, but that's how we're going to do it from now on, is what the mind will say. Like, no, we don't want to do it like that. That's what this is about. Slowing down, being with, learning the language that's there in those parts of ourselves that have their own language and their own way of doing things. All right, so video off, notes. Yeah, and then I guess the last thing is just like I was saying before, take care of you. Default to you. If during any part of this, the majority of you is like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, stop. Do not force yourself. I know Erin talked about like moving through the discomfort, and that's the pace that she goes, and the work that she does. My work and my pace says, when the majority of you says we don't want to do this anymore, listen, because the trust is so important, so important. There are ways that we have not listened to ourselves over and over and over again. And if I'll just ask y'all, if you had a person that you were connected to that you said, hey, I want this, or I need this, and they didn't listen to you over and over and over and over again, what happens to that relationship? What happens to your even willingness to ask them for things? What happens to your trust in that person that just continues to dismiss and ignore you and suppress you and oppress you? There's not that trust there. And then that person comes back around and says, okay, I'm ready to listen. Really? Seriously? That's what's happening inside of us right now. Like, oh, you're going to pay attention now. I got things to say. So let's listen. All right. Everybody take a deep go. Deep breath. Feel free also, do whatever feels good to you in whatever it is that I'm going to do. I'm sitting, so I'm good. A lot of my directives are going to be sitting, but I'm going to try to do the moving around. Like, okay, if you're standing, do this. If you're laying down, do this. But if you need to lay down, lay down. If you need to sit up, sit up. If you need to stand up, stand up. Do all the things that are necessary for you to feel immersed in you so that you can be with you the best. All right, let me read these a little bit. Okay, care for parts of ourselves. Emotion is energy. So it's differently, and this is the energy we need. Friday. Yes, it is. Going into the weekend, and you know, it's like new moon in Scorpio. It's Friday the 13th. I mean, listen. And there's something about this weekend too that's crackling. So we're gonna definitely need to slow down so we can really pay attention to everything that's happening and not move at the speed of dehumanization. Slowing down. All right. So you can feel free, like I said, to turn the videos off so you can be with yourself. Get yourself to a neutral position. If you're sitting, you want to find yourself in a place where you're not using a lot of energy to hold yourself up. You don't want to be leaning too far forward or backward, left or right. Same thing if you're standing. If you're laying down, just find yourself a position that's going to feel that if you're there for a longer period of time, that nothing's going to start hurting all of a sudden. And if you can't feel it now, feel into it. Slow down into it and be like, you know what? If I stay here, my left hip is going to hurt. So let me shift a little bit. Okay, that feels better. Neutral position. And all you're going to do is find your breath. Don't change it. Just find it. What's it doing? How deep is it? How shallow is it? Is it chest? Is it gut? Is it throat? Maybe even feel into, is your air going in and out of your nose, in and out of your mouth? What does that feel like? Is it cold air? Is it warm air? But just a regular breath. Don't shift it at all. Let it be. And if your mind starts wandering, starts to go away from the breath, bring it right back to the breath. Feel the pressure of your lungs pushing up against the inside of your chest, your back, your belly. Maybe feel that air going in the back of your throat. So we're going to bring our attention to everything that's going on with the breath. Now, as you're with your breath, I'm going to have you expand your attention just a little bit, staying with the breath, and find your heartbeat. And if you can't hold both right now, just find your heartbeat. When you move your attention to your heartbeat, where do you feel it? Where do you hear it? What's happening with it? Can you hear like the coursing of blood through your ears? Can you feel the thump in your chest? Is it faint? Is it heavy? Is it fast? Is it slow? What's happening with that heartbeat? And if you chose just the heart, see if you can expand that attention just a little bit to include the breath. See if you can pay attention to your breath and your heartbeat. And when you bring your attention there, does it change? Does it shift without you doing anything? Can you feel that heartbeat where your body is touching the surface? Whether it's your feet if you're standing, your butt and back if you're sitting, the whole back of you or side of you or front of you if you're laying. hovering that attention right there at your heart and your breath. So the cadence of your breath and the rhythm of your heartbeat is your center. The reason being that while the mind can wander all different times, the breath and the heartbeat are inextricably linked to the present. So when you bring your attention there, you're bringing your attention to the present. So we're going to go through a few things, and the mind is going to want to wander all over the place. And when you catch it doing that, bringing yourself back to the cadence of your breath and the rhythm of your heartbeat. Now, while you're sitting with those, now I invite you to elongate that breath. A deeper breath in and a slight pause at the top. And a deeper, slower breath out and a pause at the bottom. Now, that pause at the bottom is key. You don't really get taught a lot about holding our breath at the bottom. So play around with that. Slow, deep breath in, pause at the top. Slow, deep breath out, pause at the bottom, at your pace. And see if you can keep that heartbeat in your awareness as you're doing that. All right, we're going to bring our attention to our physical self. What I'm going to do there, staying there, you're going to hear me speaking. Don't bring your attention to me. Just stay with your heartbeat and your breath. And then you're going to take your awareness out to your body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide us through presencing our body. And then I'm going to ask a couple of questions. And you are going to just pay attention to the answers. All right, so to presence our body, attention is with your breath and your heartbeat, staying right there in the center. To presence our bodies, what we're going to do is we're going to contract and then release different parts of our body. You can start from the head and go down to the toes. You can start from the toes, go up to the head. You can start from the inside, go to the outside, however it is that you want to do. What you're doing is contracting. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. So you contract your feet, squeeze them like fists, and then release. Then your ankles, roll them, and then release. And then calves, shins, contract, release. Knees, and on up. Go up, just a contract and release. And you can start feeling the presence of your body. If you want to use your hands, if you want to use your body to presence your body, you can squeeze your feet. You can squeeze your legs. You can pat them. You can scratch them. You can pinch. You can poke. You can rub, massage. But you're just presencing your body from head to toe, toe to head, inside to outside. Contract, release. Shoulders, neck. What you're really wanting to do, and if you want to be fluid with it, just be fluid with it. Maybe just stretching, that stretch that we did earlier, just making a little bit more of a flowing stretch dance to it, to presence all of your body. There's two times that we usually have our bodies presenced by ourselves, and that's in the shower or when we're with another and there's that cuddle or that intimacy, that physical intimacy that we have with another person. But there's not a lot of times where we presence our own bodies. We go to other people for that, but we can do that. Here it is. Make sure when you're presencing your body, you're getting up to that neck and that head, scalp, face, jaw, front of the neck, whole body. Once you do that, bringing yourself back to the center. cadence of the breath, rhythm of the heartbeat. Now your body. I'm going to ask some questions. And what I'll do is since I'm a facilitator, I'll facilitate that conversation. All your job is to do is to listen, to pay attention, to receive whatever it is that the part of you is going to tell you. Just paying attention. Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Let it be what it is. Okay? So, I'll refer to your body as physical self. I'll refer to you as person. And you're just paying attention to whatever shows up. Deep breath in, pause at the top. Deep breath out, pause at the bottom. Physical self. Where do you feel good? Where have you been feeling consistently good? Has it been face? Has it been legs, arms? Where do you feel good? Let your person know. And like I said, all you're doing in person is paying attention. Where does your body feel good? Where does your body feel good? All right, physical self. Where do you not feel good? What's uncomfortable? What might even be painful? Let your person know. Maybe move it, maybe point to it. Just let your person know in a way that they'll understand. Where do you not feel good? All right, take a deep breath into those answers. Where does your body feel good? Where does your body not feel so good? Breathe that in. Breathe in that answer. Pause with that answer. And then when you breathe out, let that answer back out into your body. So your body knows you were paying attention. Try that again. So your body let you know where it felt good, where it didn't feel so good. You're going to breathe those answers in. Take them into your heart. Pause. Breathe out. Breathing that answer back out to your body so you know that you were listening. Okay. Next question. Physical self. What does your body, or what does your person actually make you do that you don't want to do? Put yourself in a position, make a movement, point to whatever it is that you need to do. Let your person know. What does your person make you do that you don't want to do? Person, keep breathing. I know. Get a little bit angsty waiting for that answer. When you get that answer, breathing it into your heart, deep, slow, pause, and then breathe that answer back out to the body so it knows that you heard. What does your person make you do that you don't want to do? Deep breath into that answer and breathing it out. Next question. Physical self, body. What do you want to do that your person doesn't let you do? What do you want to do that your person does not let you do? Put yourself in a position, make a movement, point to, let your person know so that they understand what you want to do that they don't let you do. Stay with that heartbeat and that breath, just listening for the answer. When you get it, take a deep breath into that answer. Bring it into your heart. Pause with it. And then exhale that answer to the rest of you, to that body. Last question for physical self. Physical self, what do you need from your person? What do you need right now or in the near future? What do you need from your person? What would you like your person to know right now? Make a movement. Put yourself in a position so that your person understands. What do you need from your person? What do you want your person to know? Deep breath in to that answer as it comes. Pausing with it in your heart. Exhaling that answer out to your body. Do that one more time. All right. Thank you, physical self, for sharing. And what you're going to do is you're going to take maybe about a minute and a half, just to jot down what it is that you got. Like I said before, no long sentences or anything like that. Symbols, scribbles, shorthand, couple of words, colors. What did you get from your body? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? What do you make your body do that it doesn't want to do? What does your body want to do that you don't let it do? And what does your body want from you? Take about a minute to jot down those answers under the P for physical self. As you're doing those answers, bring yourself to your breath and your heartbeat. You can feel yourself creeping up into your mind to try to interpret, but you want to document what was given, not what you interpret. Take another below 15 seconds, breathing through your documentation. And if you're through documenting, find yourself back in that neutral place. All right, another few moments, and we'll transition. Okay. Now, moving to cadence of the breath, rhythm of the heartbeat. Find that again, and maybe doing a little bit just to elongate that breath. Pausing, breathing out, pausing. Now you're participating a little bit more in that breath, and that heartbeat will play along too. Now we're going to move to emotional self. There's going to be a couple of ways that we presence emotional self. One is through sharp breath, the sharp breathing, and another is through tone. So emotions show up in the body. They do a little bit of contracting. They have a little bit of an electricity to them. And there's an activation. There's a vibration that happens too. There's a tone that some of us associate with different emotions too. So we're going to go through that. So with the sharp breathing, what you're going to do is you're going to breathe sharply in and pause, and breathe sharply out and pause. Instead of that long, elongated, slow in and out, we're going to sharp in, sharp out. And you're going to really exaggerate that torso, pulling that air in, and really squeeze that torso, pushing that air out. Come back to that. Slow in, pause, slow out, pause. And you might feel that little bit of activation. Might be a little bit warmer, but you can feel a little bit of that energy floating around now. From there, we're going to do a kind of a grounding hum tone. We're going to start with a high and bring ourselves down to a low. It's going to sound like this. You're going to take a deep breath in. So as high as is comfortable for you, and as low as is comfortable for you. You don't have to follow my register or anybody else's register. It's a breath in. You're going to do that 2 more times. Okay. Back to that breath and heartbeat. Feeling maybe even into that body, because the body participates a lot in the emotions. Emotions aren't just something that just kind of pass through. Our bodies are antenna and channels for that emotion. So this time we're going to do 4 of those grounding tones, high to low. Each one is going to highlight an emotion. You're going to be paying attention to the emotion and where it pings, how it pings. Where in your body does it ping? Is it intense? Is it soft? Is it flowy? And then, where and how. The first one we're going to go through is happy. So, feeling into happy, starting with that high tone. Which tone pings happy? Starting with the high, going to the low, breathing in, tuning into happy. Breathe in what that tone was. Feel into where in the body does that happy land. When you feel into happy, where does it show up? Is it a chest thing? Is it a head thing? Is it a pelvis thing? Is it a legs thing? Where does happy land for you? And if you need to do the grounding tone, you can do that again just to find out again. When you get the answer, breathe it into your heart and then breathe it out. Breathe that answer out so it knows that you heard it. Back to the breath and the heartbeat. Second tone, second emotion, sad. Now you don't have to go into the depths of despair, but wherever sad you can feel, wherever sad you can tune into, and do that grounding tone. Which tone is it? Where does it land in the body? What does it feel like? Sad. Breathing in, grounding tone. Where does sad ping for you? If you need to do it again, do that again. If you have the answer, breathe that answer into your heart. And then breathe that answer out so that it knows that it was intended to. We're going to take a sharp breath in and a sharp breath out just so we can cleanse that sad, that happy, sad piece. Third tone. Third emotion. Fear. You can go to worry, you can go to concern. Grounding tone. Which tone? Where does it land in the body? What does it feel like? Fear. Breathing in, grounding tone. Where does that land in the body? I know fear is one of those that's hard to track because we numb to it a lot. But usually we can feel where it's at, where we can feel the edges of it. You feel the edges of where it hits. If you need to do the grounding tone again, you can do that. Or you can focus on the tone and see if it lands somewhere in your body. When you get that answer, breathing it into your heart, pausing with it, and then breathing that answer right back out so it knows that it was attended to. Maybe take a couple more breaths, staying with that heart and that breath. Fear is one of those that'll get us to move away from ourselves, get us to dissociate, get us to retreat into our minds so that we can travel somewhere else, bringing ourselves back to our breath and our heartbeat. Breathing in with a knowing that we're good right here, that we're all right. We're not being attacked right now. We're just remembering a lot of the ways that we were harmed, that we might have been attacked before. Taking a really long, slow, deep breath into that, gathering up all of that. And what you're going to do when you get to the exhale is you're going to like you're blowing out a candle, a single point. One more time, deep, slow breath in, collecting all that, place in that tone of sad. Blowing it out like a candle. Maybe moving your body around just a little bit. Because we're going to be moving over to that final tone of anger. You're going to do that grounding tone. Where does anger sit on that scale? Where does it land in your body? What does that feel like? Anger is another one of those alongside fear that we suppress because it's not okay in this culture. So deep breath in, grounding tone. Where does it land? Paying attention from that heartbeat and that breath. Maybe another grounding tone or just another breath. Staying with that heartbeat and that breath. It's another one of those that we want to escape from, or we want to do something with. The only thing we're doing is paying attention. Next breath is breathing in that answer into your heart. Breathing that answer back out. Let your emotions know that it was tended to. Once you do that 2 more times with the anger, it can collect. There's places that it pulls up that's been waiting to be heard. So breathing into those and collecting those, bringing them into your heart, holding them, and then breathing them back out. Okay. Now 2 more breaths. They're going to be sharp ones. You're going to breathe in sharply so you can grab onto whatever residual is there. And then that sharp out breath is like you're expelling it like a dragon fire, letting that out of your system. Maybe contract your whole body to let it all out. If you need to do one more, do that. I just have one question for your emotional self. Emotional self, let your person know which emotion would you like your person to express more. Happy, sad, afraid, or angry? Which emotion do you want your person to express more? If you need to do a grounding tone, if you need to show up in the body, however, let your person know, however it is that you need to, which emotion would you like your person to express more? And I'll put on the extra and not suppress. Person, I want you to breathe into that. I want you to use your regular breath to breathe into that answer, holding it in your heart and breathing that answer out. Do that about 5 times. Emotional self is giving you a gift of a way that you might have been suppressing yourself. That is asking to be released and expressed. Not judging the answer, not interpreting, staying with that breath and that heartbeat. Which emotion is being asked to be expressed rather than suppressed. One more slow, deep breath, gathering all that in with a thank you for your emotional self. A pause, and then an out breath of that gratitude. And then move to document. Under E for emotional self, staying with your breath and your heartbeat. You can jot down whatever it is that you got. What and where was happy, sad, afraid, angry, and which emotion was asking to be expressed more. Those were the things. Where do those 4 emotions land, and which one is asking to be expressed more? No long sentences, no interpretations, however it showed up. Even if you need to draw a stick figure and draw circles, do that. It's better than trying to translate. Take about a minute for that. Stay with that breath and that heartbeat. Don't retreat into the head. Or I would say the mental self, because it's not just the head that the mental self lives. All right, another 15 seconds. Okay. Another couple of moments. Wrap that documentation up. Get yourself back to neutral. Finding that breath and that heartbeat. Slow in, pause. Slow out, pause. We're going to do one more dimension. It's going to be the social self. We're going to save mental. I'm going to save that for y'all to do. I'll have a couple of prompts for y'all in that, just so your mental self knows, hey, I'm being ignored. No, you get all the attention. It's social self's time. The part of us that doesn't get any attention in this culture. Relationships. Relationship to land, relationship to place, relationship to self, relationship to other. Breathe real deep and slow. Pausing at the top. Out deep and slow, pausing at the bottom. Now, as I said before, language of relational self is more of that draw toward or draw away. How we're going to presence relational self is we just do a couple of orientations. So it's relational self, person, place, thing. Person, place, thing. And we're going to think about the draw to. What people, places, and things have your kind of like subtle body, that subtle internal body expand to want to hug and envelop, bring closer, go closer. Person, places, or thing. Staying with that breath and that heartbeat and feel that expansion when you think about that person or that place or that thing that has you open and expand and reach for. I want you to breathe into that. When you feel that expansion, maybe even you're not thinking of those things. Maybe those people are showing up when your social self is opening up and expanding. Maybe you're surprised. Oh, I didn't even realize that I liked that place like that, or that person like that, or that thing like that. Breathing deeply into that. It's that expansion of social self. Where does that show up? Is it expanded in the gut? Is it expanding in the throat? Is it expanding in the pelvis? Where is that expansion? All right. Deep breath into that answer. And then breathing that out. You know what that expansion is. You know what you're drawn to. You know who you're drawn to. You know where you're drawn to. Now we're going to talk about that contraction, that draw away from. Person, place, thing. What do you recoil from? When you picture yourself in front of or in the midst of that person, place, or thing, what has you draw inward? Who has you draw inward? Where has you draw inward? And where do you feel that? Is it in your chest, where your breath and your heartbeat are? Is it in your gut, where that dissociation starts from? Is it in your head? Feel through that contraction. Feel through that draw away. Who, what, and where shows up when you feel that drawing in and that pulling away from. And be surprised by the answer. There's a lot of ways that we don't want to say, no, but I really like this. No, let that answer be there. Stay with that breath and the heartbeat. Who, what, and where draw away from. Breathe into that answer. And then breathe it out. Do that a couple of times. That one can be a little bit more challenging because we force ourselves to expand when we want to contract. So breathe in that answer a couple of times and breathe that out so it's heard. We'll have one question for social self. Actually, we'll have two. First being social self. What or who is a person, place, or thing that your person keeps you away from reaching for, stops you from reaching for? There's a person, place, or thing that your person stops you from reaching for. Stay at that heart. Stay with that breath. There's a lot of argument that we want to do with that. There's a lot of reasoning that we want to do with that. But don't. Let the answer be the answer. And breathe the answer in as soon as it comes. Breathing it back out so social self knows you're paying attention. One more time for that answer. All right, back to that breath and that heartbeat. Second question. Social self. Who or what is a person, place, or thing that you want to recoil from, that you want to leave and be away from, that your person forces you to go toward and to be with? This one's a really tricky one to not want to mess with the answer. With the, but we have to. No responses, staying with the breath and the heartbeat. What comes up when social self wants to contract? Who or what shows up? Who, what, or where shows up? Whenever that answer comes, breathe that answer in as deep as you can. Hold for as long as you can without being too uncomfortable and straining. And then breathe that answer out. Let the answer be the answer. You want to be conscious with the answers, not dismissive. Who, what, or where, social self, do you want to pull away from that your person keeps going to? All right. Now with that, I want you to take the whole totality of that expansion and that contraction. Breathe slowly and deeply and intentionally with that breath and that heartbeat, taking in all of that, because there's a lot there. Social self doesn't get heard or listened to or paid attention to a lot. So we're going to be really intentional in slowing down that pace to be with. Breathing all the way into the center of your heart, pausing and being with it, and then breathing slowly and deeply out while staying with it. One more time at your own pace, and when you're finished with that, move to the documenting, and we're going to stay slow in the documenting on that one. Staying with the heart and the breath, slowly documenting what showed up. Person, place, or thing showed up. Where does the expansion happen for you? Where does the contraction happen for you inside of yourself? And then what person, place, or thing does your social self want to reach for that you don't let it, or that wants to retract from that you don't let it? Take about a minute and a half on that one. No long answers or interpretations. Maybe stick figures, maybe symbols, maybe letters. Because you'll know when you're what you've written down. Honoring the answer right now. Staying with the breath and the heartbeat. Take another 30 seconds. If you're finished documenting, just take that rest of that 20 seconds just to be with you, get in that neutral place, breathing into the inner edges of yourself, and then breathing out and coming right back to center. So that center is now going to be expanded to encapsulate all of you. When you breathe in, and then when you breathe out, it collapses right down to a singularity in that breath and that heartbeat. All right, finish documenting. We're going to take 3 breaths like that as we wrap that part up. And as you're taking those breaths, allow your body just to go ahead and move with it too. There's some places that maybe the body wasn't participating as much. And so we're going to presence our bodies to get that answer flowing through, those emotions flowing through, that relational self rolling, and the social self rolling through. Integrating, feeling into those answers. There's a lot of information. All of you deserves all of the truth, not just kept in the mental banks. All right. Now, on your own time, if you're comfortable or when you're comfortable, you can come off a video. And I'd love for you to put into the chat what showed up for you. And this can be whatever pops up. When you look at what you've documented, staying with your breath and your heartbeat, even as you're looking at it, what pops out the most? Is there a dimension of self that pops up the most? Is there an answer that pops up the most? Where does your mind gravitate to? Or what shows up in your mind that you would like to share? And you can share as much or as little as you want to in the chat. And we're going to stick with the chat right now. We'll have a moment to share verbally. But we want to take some time just for folks to be with themselves and use this other medium so they don't have to disconnect to speak. I'm going to let some of these answers come in and not disturb anybody that's typing out their answers with my voice. Just let those come in a little bit, and then I'll read them off. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll read a couple of these. So Megan says, really noticed some of the feelings that she doesn't give herself space for, anger especially, and where they show up in her body. Also feeling how separate all the parts of yourself are, so compartmentalized or fragmented, just so distant and far away. Mm-hmm. Sukata, I hope I'm saying that right, Sukata, was struck by where emotions show up in the body, and also how connected while separate all of these things are. So yes, there is an interconnectivity. As much as our cultures do separate us, there's still the tendrils, there's still that connection, that interconnectivity there. Megan feeling the strong desire to help kids feel these different parts of themselves. Yes, yes. I'm going to speak to that a little bit. Christy says, who knew her body had so much to say to her? I knew. This culture, whew, apparently something that would be beneficial to do more often. Yes, I definitely encourage that slowing down and being with. There's so many things that people say, the buzzwords of doing your work or doing the work. This is it. The systems that we try to fix out there are happening inside of us. And if we're imbalanced and inequitable inside of ourselves and we're trying to fix the outside, what are we going to turn that into? A version of us that is unbalanced, that is inequitable. We need to do that internal work too. Sarah says, feeling a lot of restriction, especially in the upper chest. Very aware of spinning and bouncing around. Brain feels right now. Thank you. Wonderful practice. Kim says, giving way room for what rationalization has pushed away. Mm-hmm. So much value in physical body when permission is feel to open. Mm-hmm. Yes, that permission. Like a permission can be something. Alyssa, body has been sprinting through the marathon that we've been running since March. Listen, right? Thanking me for facilitating the opportunity to slow down, connect, and mosey. Important to lean into all of the emotions and recognize that one is not superior or better than the other. Mm-hmm. They live and exist together. That's one of the things about this work that I do too, is that yes, there's a hierarchy to each one of these dimensions. And within each of these dimensions, there's a hierarchy. And emotions, happy, that gets top billing. And then I'm not sure. I would probably say that sad might be underneath anger when it comes to the hierarchy. I think sad is something that our culture is like, get that away from me. We don't talk about death. We don't talk about endings. We sharp end one thing and start begin another thing, because sad is something that's so taboo. So there's hierarchies even in each one of these dimensions. Fadin says, body does not like to sit in the anger space. Actually stop breathing. Mm-hmm. I'll say this, with Black and brown bodies, that anger embodied, just being embodied, period, is not okay. And anger is one of those things that's like, it demands to be embodied. There's a lot of work in disassociating from anger. And so we lock up. We either lock up or we explode. There's no really in between when it comes to it. And so to be able to honor that, to be able to sit with it, to be able to be with it so it can share its wisdom. Protection. This needs to be protected. This boundary has been crossed. It's valuable information that we then lock ourselves away from because it can't be expressed or it's not an emotion that we're friends with, that we embrace and say, thank you, I am pissed. Yeah. Sarah's noticing that she can't even feel her heartbeat, even with conscious attention. Oh, it's hard to feel. Yeah. And that can go to numbing in a whole bunch of different ways. The food we eat, the things that we pay attention to, the sensitivity or the nuance that happens within us. Okay. So tying this into social emotional learning and being with our young people. Now, there's a lot that opened up. There's things that you discovered. There's things that you might have known already that were just reaffirmed. But all that stuff is always happening, even at the speed that we're doing it. So that anger will pop off. That sad is going to be there. No matter how much we compartmentalize and numb it, it's still happening, even in the speed. And the thing about our young people is they're sensitive. They haven't been numbed yet. They haven't been like, for a lot. They haven't had years, even if they've been traumatized, abused, had harsh conditions and circumstances heaped upon them. It hasn't been years and years and years that we've had, so that we are in that rut, that we're stuck, that we have this pattern that's already established, this program that's already established. So they have a little bit more openness. And when we show up with all of our mess and we bring that to them, hey, regulate. Like, but you ain't regulated. I'm just tuning into you. Even when you have to show a face and still roiling with anger. Like, I'm going to respond to that. I know how to respond to that. I know how to respond to calm face, angry. That means like the threat is just hiding and ready to strike. So I'm going to respond to that in kind, by running away, by resisting, all the things. The more that we pay attention to ourselves and how we project onto, judge, dominate, suppress ourself into imbalance, the more that is going to be the message that gets translated, even as we say certain words or we try to engage in somebody intellectually about how they should be doing their thing. We can think that we are all together. We can even feel all together, but when we're sinking in and paying attention, oh, there's things that I'm making my body do that it doesn't want to do. And here I am telling this young person not to do that. Wonder how that message is getting across. That do as I say, not as I do, doesn't really work with young people. Doesn't really compute. And we've learned it that way. So how about we tune in? We're like, okay, you know what? How about I be real and authentic with this? I'm really upset. I am so upset. I can't even think straight. I'm gonna go take care of that. I'll be back to you. And taking our own time outside of those moments to keep on tuning in. I've been working with young people for over 20 years now, and I end up being the favorite because I'm about being messy. I'm about being more human than our institutions say that we should be, have policies around it, and then are acculturated to it. You're not supposed to play favorites. I have favorite kids. That's just how it happens. We're not supposed to have one that we're like that we're standoffish against. If I have that, I have that. I show up with that. It's like, I got beef with you. What's going on? What's happening here? And being real, being that real brings more real. Being able to honor, like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a lot for a lot of people. You don't have to like me at all. I'm not gonna try to make you like me. That's not honoring how you feel. I want to do that because I honor how I feel. And it's disruptive. It kind of rocks the boat of the systems a little bit, but I mean, we're human. Each one of us is different. As much as we try to be the same, stay the same, we can put a whole bunch of people with the exact same identities together, and every last one of them is different. We all know this. Twins. Anybody that knows twins, there might be one magical unicorn set of twins that you might know that are similar and the same. But all the rest of the twins, all the twins that I've met, completely different. Same DNA and everything, different. If twins can be different, why can't the rest of us be different? Social emotional learning is really about being able to expand our context and our container to be able to say, all right, this is what's showing up. Our organic bodies, our energetic emotions, our rooting and interconnected relations and social self, and the ways that we think. Because we can think creatively, we can think logically and mechanically, that mind space, that mental space has a whole lot of capacity to it that we get robbed of when we're taught. So that social emotional learning is bringing more of that. Okay, this is top heavy. Let's go to the roots, and let's bring more of that energy up from the roots, rather than trying to manage everything here. Because when we were talking, when Erin and Antonio was bringing up, no, it wasn't. It was actually you, Erin, brought up behavior management. That's this. This is about social emotional learning is about bringing this in line so that this can operate at high functionality. And no, social emotional learning is actually about bringing the whole ass person into the picture, because this is not a whole person. And neither is this. Erin talked about the former neo-Nazi Republican. Erasing this isn't going to be all right either. It's about bringing all of this together. All right. Floor is open. Voices want to be spoken in. You want to share what you want to share. You want to ask a question. I got you. Let's go.
I would love to hear how you have done pieces of that with kids, because I just keep thinking about what a powerful tool this is, or practice for like really just communicating with kids that all of those feelings, all of those spaces of themselves are okay. And I think that that's like what's at the heart of SEL for me, is that honoring of all of the pieces of ourselves. And when I think about why like you're here in the equity framework, it's that especially our Black and brown kids have not been given permission to be all of themselves. And so starting with that inner self seems like totally the way to start. And we work with littles, so we've got our second, third, fourth, fifth graders. They're babies, but they need this now. And so I'm just curious to hear how you've done this with kids too, and how different.
Yeah. I haven't had the opportunity to do this virtually with the littles. I have done it with the high schoolers, you know, in a camp space, and then in a couple of other school type spaces. And those are similar, except they're just kind of skewed toward, you know, shorter practices and things like that, with the attention spans and maybe can jump with the social media, you know. But when you first asked, my mind jumped right straight to preschool. So I was a movement teacher for Head Start. And I would get each one of the classes, 20 kids, and the teachers, I would give the teachers a break. Like, don't even worry about it. I got them. Like, hey, I got a few problem kids. Like, problem kids. You go ahead and throw that language away. Give them to me. Take a little break. I got them. And the thing that I did with them is it was similar. So this was a long time ago, before I even came up with just the specific practice and framework and everything. But and it was just about paying attention to the ways that I did my work with young people, was being in a dimension. So I was a movement teacher. So I was like, okay, let's get these bodies going. Bodies are happening. I would take them on runs in the woods. We'd go on this path and we would run, sprint as far as we could, stop, and then we would stop, all get in a circle and breathe. And I would have us breathe in, slow and stop, breathe out, slow and stop. Do that 5 times. So it was and then paying attention to the sensations of the body. Are your legs tingling? Are your feet? Say what parts of your body you're feeling right now. And they would say that. And then I would call out an animal, and we would all kind of make that animal noise. And then I would count down, and we would sprint again. And we would sprint and sprint and sprint, and then we would stop. And then I would go, okay, how are you feeling today? How were you feeling this morning? Were you angry? Were you sad? Were you happy? Make the face. Breathe in, make the face. They would make the face. They would look at it, look at other people's faces. Which one is happy? Which one is sad? All right, call out another animal noise, do that animal, sprint. So it's about taking the moments that happen and really diving into that particular dimension and being with them in it. Like, it's okay to be here. And so when I would have, so if we're all doing something and there was one little girl that was just not having it, just really, really, really upset, like angry upset. And so I'm like, all right, you know what? How about you go over here? I'm gonna see you real quick. I gave the other kids something to do that was like kind of manageable because I had time with them and everything like that. So they knew it was like, all right, did that, went over to her and just sat with her and was like, all right, what I'm gonna have you do, have this ball. I wanna have you squeeze this ball with how angry you are until it pops. Make this ball pop. Squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it as hard as you can, make it pop. Put your anger into it, make it just go. And she did. And I think one of the things that's also key is just like me doing my own work and feeling like it's okay for that to happen allowed her to do it. Because not everybody can just go over to her and have her have that, because they're like, anger is not okay. So, all right, do this ball thing, and I don't really like this, but and she can feel it, and it's like, all right, I don't trust it. But being able to say, you know what, be angry, be really angry. Is there one thing that you're angry about? Scream that word, scream that name, scream whatever it is. And able to do that. So it's like it's being emergently with what's showing up right then and there. That's how to be with young people. That's how I've worked with young people. And that's why I end up being the favorite, is really moving with, all right, where are we at? Where are we at as a group? And I can be there. And if an individual peels off, I can be with that if I have the capacity to.
I'm about to go round up my grandbabies now. We're about to go outside and sprint.
It was their favorite part. Are we going for the run today? Like, not today.
Very, very good. I think for me, what comes up for me is it is very similar to Alyssa, around just taking that moment to mosey. We've just been in this space of go, 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 and pivot, 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 and ebb, 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 and flow, flow, flow. And I love it. I love that. But you can only ride on that for a minute, and then you run out of steam, and then you can't give what you don't have,
Right.
So I might just have to take this whole recording and chop it up and sell it. No. But I really am going to be like putting this into practice for myself. I love this, the ending on inner, because that's where the work starts, and
yes.
Even for us, we've been in, youth development space for a long time, and, we know some things, we done walk through some things, but we don't know everything, right. And there's still room for us to grow and learn and figure out how do we help our young people become. So we got to become first, we got to be on that journey first before we can ask them to example it and ask them to follow. Right. So
right.
Those are
right. What are they following?
Yeah, those are the things that are coming up, for me. So I appreciate just the whole piece. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, that slowing down is so important. There's not a lot of ways and times that we for ourselves slow down. There's things that we end up doing or not doing. There's a lot that we think that we're resting, but really we're just not doing stuff. And that's not rest. That's not like this conscious, like, oh, this is what you want me to do, body. Like, I mean, for me, sleep is one of those things where it's weird for me because I sleep 4 hours a day. And it's really because I run high energy, but I also, whenever there's time for a nap or whenever it's like, my body's like, yo, nap time, we're going to take a nap because I'm going to honor this. And I know that's not the way that our systems are set up. We have our little 15 or 30-minute breaks for lunch. And, and since we're already wound up, to be able to get ourselves to slow down enough to even take a 10-minute nap, which is really important, we can't power down because we're doing this. So really being able to sit with and be with self is really important. One of the ways that I do it, and what I'll give you is that kind of a prompt for mental self is, and this is a thing that I do called mindful momentum. It's a mindful moment with a parenthesis around the and the is a pause. In our culture, we talk and we want to fill up the spaces with sounds so that somebody else doesn't jump in. So I'm still talking, and so I am going to make sounds while I think, but I'm not really thinking because I'm making sounds. But taking that moment to pause, set 4 alarms in your day, or just set 4 alarms in your day. If you wake up at 8, set an alarm for 10, set an alarm for noon, set an alarm for 2, set an alarm for 4. And in those moments, check in with you. Body, how am I doing? Emotions, how am I doing? Social, how am I doing? Even mental, how am I doing? Am I confused? Am I closed? Am I spaced? Am I in the past or the future? We're just doing a check-in, quick little check-in, round, and maybe even document it, and then go about your day. But just even taking those moments where just not even 5 minutes. You could take 2. I mean, if 5 minutes sounds like way too much time for me to spend in checking in with myself, take 2, 30 seconds for each dimension. Okay. And I'll keep going. And then if you do document, then you'll be able to see, okay, this is what my day flow looks like. And if you have a whole week's worth of that, then you have that, and it's like, ooh, there's something here that I need to really pay attention to. And I can take the weekend to deepen into that and maybe even every hour do it. But being able to take that pause is essential, and we don't, period. We don't. Work, do, sleep. Work, do, sleep. And that translates to our young people. They feel it. We're anxious. We're sped up. So much. Who else has something?
I'm Sarah. I had kind of a question, thought. With sort of like the practice you led us through, and like the idea of like rest. I mean, I find that it actually takes a lot of I don't know if discipline's the right word, but a lot of intention to rest and to like listen to my body and be like, okay, this, especially like I feel like it's been a matter of just like making it through the days the past like 6 months or whatever. It's like being able to say like, no, rest is the most important thing in this moment. Or like with I have a daughter in remote learning, and being able to say like she is going to have to skip the next session because she really needs a break. And in the and knowing how hard that is like for me as an adult, and then but children so often don't have the option, to say like, my body says I need to rest. And so I guess my question or thought is like, how do we take, we give children these social and emotional skills and tools, and then supporting them in that by like really empowering adults to say like, yeah, right now the whole classroom or you or as a teacher or whatever needs to take this rest, or needs to do this thing differently, or needs to address the fact that children in the classroom are hurting right now, and that's more important than making sure everybody's iReady gets done by noon or something. Not picking on iReady, it's great to have tools, but it's like, yeah, I think about it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a good point. I mean, that's one of the, I won't necessarily say trade-offs, but it's a casualty. is we get put into the binary of having to choose an either or. Either I choose the system or I choose myself. And if I choose myself, then the system is going to kick me out. I can't take there's this work that I had been doing earlier this year talks about second best design. The curriculum and the agenda that we come in with is the second best design. The first best design is what shows up in the room. What and who shows up in the room. If I have a curriculum to teach this and something else pops up and everybody's like, oh, that's what we're doing. The people are the important thing. And so to go to a system and say, hey, I would like to have the whole of my human being honored in this space, the adults, the system, like the system, and then the agents of the system that the people are and everything like that, say, well, no, we're not going to do that. And so then it's like, oh, well, then let me go ahead and change the system. But then meanwhile, my person is sitting here like, well, but you just left me to deal with that. The only thing, I mean, that's where I loved Erin's talk. There was so many portals that I wanted to go into when it comes to my work. But one of the things that she was talking about was relationship. And I mean, like for me, that's also the key. Like that's our grounding. Think about it as like a tree. If the roots aren't deep and the roots aren't strong enough, the tree can't grow as tall as it might be. It has the potential to grow because it doesn't want to fall. And so having those relationships, being able to build those relationships with the system, not at the detriment of your daughter or at the detriment of yourself, and saying, okay, there's many different ways to rest. How do I actually rest? Turning off my brain isn't necessarily, like for me, I used to watch a whole mess of TV and I thought that was rest, but really it was just dissociation. I don't have to feel the way that my body feels because I'm just taking all this information into my eyes and into my mind. So how do I rest? Do I rest by just sitting back and not thinking about or doing anything? Do I turn off all sound and all light? Is a nap rest? Is going for a walk in nature, is that for me rest? Because it might not be like resting my body per se, but I'm getting a different kind of stimulus than I would get with the hard walls and the fluorescent lights and all these other things. So really looking at the many different hows that rest can happen and seeing about how those can be employed in maybe even small doses. If the system is like at a hard no for allowing it, it's like, how can I get the little pockets of it so they can all accumulate? Because it's all a practice. What I just walked us through is a practice. You don't just do it the once and then all of a sudden, okay, I know myself and I'm connected and everything's good now. No, it takes that mindful momentum. It takes that continuous pause. It takes that montage that's spread out into practice to say, okay, now I can move at your speed and still honor myself and still hear myself. And so it's those little pieces and being able to do that. And then the relationships that you create that say, all right, there's something more that needs to happen here because the ways that we've been doing things have not been working, as evidenced by what's happened this year in the pandemic, really highlighting the way that the systems aren't serving us. So can we dream about something different and having enough relationship to be able to make some room for that? That's kind of what comes up for me.
I think the language you're using is really powerful too, because I keep thinking about how, you just don't hear people talk about rest all that often. Like a lot of the time people describe what you're talking about, and I don't think they really get it, but they talk about recharging. And that is that whole frame is built around so you can get back to work. It devalues the resting, and it doesn't make that in and of itself the goal, right? The goal is like, better hurry up and take a nap so you can get back to work.
Yes. Yeah, and in that, like rest is important, but also processing and integrating.
Yes.
So it's like I was talking about with Erin's talk, and this isn't even about like Erin herself. This is just about the ways that we've been taught to take in information. There was somebody that I was even talking to last week that was saying, I go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and I don't have any process speed. So like by the time I'm done, if I've had 5 meetings, I'm only retaining the information from the last one. I haven't had a time to even let that, if we even just take what I've been taught, where the mind is, it's all up here, and we haven't even let that sediment fall before we got it kicked up again with more information. But even having a little bit of space to just be like, how does this information land in my body? Oh wait, I don't actually like this particular concept, and I don't even get to ask a question about it because I'm just now figuring out that I don't like it because the whole meeting was Bob saying stuff for a whole hour. So rest, processing, slowing down, being with. I love slow walks as a way to process. It's like, okay, what have I been, because I'm a reflector. I love to reflect on things. And so being able to reflect while walking, now this energy is being moved, things are starting to come down, starting to feel, oh, this is what's going on. This is where I made a mistake. Oh, I made a mistake? Oh, dang, I missed it. Okay, I gotta make sure to do repair on that. And so it just really gets in and it gets down. It roots in. Rest, processing, integration. All right, Kim says, not only you can't process the meeting, but also expectation for action items. Need space and yet no room. Can't create space. Is toxic to rest or community care. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Action items. Always gotta be doing something. Always gotta be doing something. Doing rest. You make her do rest. Anybody else have anything to share? Is one of the things, just so much of my work is really about bringing us into the equation, because so much of what we've been taught and what we've been put into is, even as Erin was saying again, leaving a part of ourselves out, which does not put us a part of the equation. We're not a part of the equation in school. We're not a part of the equation at work. We're not a part of the equation, even in our relationships. Hey, I need you to be different. I need you to not do this anymore. I need you to do this. I'm not going to honor this part of you, so don't bring it, or I'm going to punish it. So there's so many different ways that our fullness isn't even allowed. And then when we're alone, we don't allow our own fullness, as evidenced by your body saying, this is the thing that I want to do that you don't let me do. And this is us. Like, if anybody had my back, it was supposed to be you, right? But you don't want to let me do it. Why? We're alone. Nobody's going to judge us. Oh, but wait, you're judging us. Okay. There's so much in there. So much in there. We have to allow our own. One of the questions I ask in another workshop that I do, Inclusion Includes You, is, can we ask someone to include us in ways that we don't include ourselves? Can we ask of a person or an entity to include us in a way that we don't include ourselves? I want you to honor my feelings. Meanwhile, I'm over here judging the shit out of my feelings. Like, okay, so you want somebody else to do something that you're not willing to do for yourself. Okay, cool. All right, good talk. And that goes to the young people. You're not honoring your social emotional self, but you're here teaching me this? For real, for real.
I'm really moved to get to do this in the space with all of these other people who care so much about young people. And it gives me, I think just like seeing the chats and feeling kind of as much as you can feel the energy through Zoom, you know, it just gives me hope that like there's going to be, that we'll take this with us and it'll translate into practice just by doing it for ourselves. Like that's a meaningful change. That gives me some hope. And I haven't had a lot of hope the last couple of weeks, so,
Yeah,
or months.
I'm glad. Right. 2020.
It's been hard to have hope.
Remember New Year's 2019? This is gonna be my year. I got all these resolutions, all these plans.
Gone.
It's us. And I loved Erin inviting all of us to bring that 5-second breath into whatever situations. And I mean, you think about it in a meeting, in a conversation with a loved one, in the grocery store, in the car. It's like, okay, where am I? Because right now I am not a part of this equation. 1/4 of me is a part of this equation, my mind. What about the rest? And it's hard to catch. It's hard to catch when we're not fully present. Yeah. We think we are, right? All right. Anybody else have any final pieces? Because that's what I got. I got my mosey on. You know, giving y'all some mosey.
I'm always happy to give us the gift of time so we can keep our mosey going.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Well, we appreciate you. That was a gift this afternoon.
I'm glad. I'm so glad. Yeah. And yeah, with mental stuff, I really do encourage that making those alarms for yourself as a check-in, and having mental self be more of a space holder, more of a listener, more paying attention and less directive. Of course, there's things that you need to do and quote unquote get through, and there's so many different ways that if you're looking at an equity space and you're having conversations, there's people that aren't listening because there's so much thinking that their worldview is everybody else's. And that's what we've been taught. That's what our mental self has been taught. The rest of me operates just as swiftly and just exactly the same way using the same language. Not true. We tell white people, just listen. Okay, you first. Are you listening to yourself? Maybe start.
Thank you.
So welcome.
The only other thing I have to close us out, I'm gonna share my screen again for a quick sec, is just that we're gonna keep this train rolling. We're gonna keep doing trainings. We're gonna keep holding space for these conversations, for learning new ways of being. And our next training is gonna be December 4th. We're going to have Kashika Aurora come from Seattle Children's Hospital. She's phenomenal. She's just a wonderful woman working in our community. And she's going to talk about supporting kids with big feelings. So again, moving away from that idea that SEL is about how kids control feelings, but this is about how they express feelings and how they move through feelings and how we can be our best empathetic selves for them. So I really hope that you'll all come. We'll send you a survey, the resources that Erin talked about, the link to this recording so you can do this practice again, and where you can sign up for our next training. Erin, any last words of wisdom?
Take care of yourselves this weekend.
Absolutely.
Let this weekend, this is good. You know, again, we can't give what we don't have. And so we're surrounded in a space where we want to see young people grow up to be the best that they could possibly be. you know, and they learn by what they see. So they are watching us, you know, and so while that's pressure, it cannot be as pressure, you know, feeling when we know how we show up in a space, you know. So this was just absolutely needed for me today, you know. So that's just my closeout, is just take care of you. And when we do that, we're able to sow into others, you know. So thank you guys for being a part and for coming. And Mike, that was awesome. I promise I'm gonna sell this video. I'm gonna sell it and make some money.
Sell me so I can make the money. I really do appreciate being here. And one of the things I really want to highlight, or the thing I want to highlight, is I don't take trust lightly. I've gone through a lot of work really rebuilding trust with myself. And so when people offer their trust to me by allowing me to guide them back to themselves, it's I have such deep gratitude and honoring of that. So I thank y'all for allowing me to be here and trusting me with you and with this space.
All right. Happy weekend, y'all.
Thank you.